Welcome in, everybody, to the Prophecy Misfits Podcast. This is episode, 357? If I have the thing, there it is. 357, Boiling Point. And tonight is going to be a wild ride. I hope you guys grab some caffeine of some type and are strapped in and ready to go for this, because this is going to be a big one. This week has been just absolutely insane. Insane doesn't even begin to describe it, and we've got a ton of stuff to be going over. So, spill the tea. But yeah, so we've got a lot of things that we're going to be covering. But welcome in, guys. Thank you for joining me. If this is your first time here, this is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We get together and we go over the crazy things that are happening in the world. We take it from the viewpoint of trying not to be deceived, and to constantly be aware of everything that's going on to the best of our ability, so we're not caught off guard. And we want to know as Jack Nicholson would say, or was it Jack Nicholson? The truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Who's the one that? I don't know. Anyways, I've lost my mind. I'm out of my mind. So forget everything I just said. But yeah, so we're going to be going over a ton of things. I can't even begin to list off everything. But yeah, we're going to be traveling all over the world. We got stuff going on with Iran. We got stuff in the United States. We've got stuff in what's going on in different parts, like different states. We got stuff with China and Russia. We got things in Ukraine. We got stuff in Venezuela and Cuba and Greenland, and it just keeps going on. Yeah, Jack Nicholson said you can't handle the truth. So yeah, I think I got those mixed up. Anyways, like I said, I've lost my mind. All right. Yeah. So, hopefully y'all had a good week. Hopefully you guys are staying sane the best that you can. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and get into some of this stuff going on. But first up, let's get into some housekeeping.
Housekeeping?
No, thank you. Sleeping.
Housekeeping?
All right, so for housekeeping, usual spiel, if you guys can like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the gospel out to as many people as we possibly can. And we do that by talking about the warning signs of everything that's happening. And hopefully we can use that as a bridge to share the salvation that can only be found through Jesus Christ. And so liking, sharing, and subscribing does help reach those people. So if you guys can do me solid, I'd appreciate it. You can also follow on Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back up live streaming over on Rumble. So make sure you guys follow over there. Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format, I throw up on Telegram. So make sure you guys go ahead and do that if you are so inclined. If you don't like Rumble, you don't like Telegram, I understand. Just make sure you bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything that's going on with Wretched Watchmen. And all the stuff happening there. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams. The announcements are there, the free book to download, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So you guys can go ahead and check that out and bookmark it so you're aware of everything happening. And then last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel, yeah, please don't throw up on Telegram. But yeah, if you guys like to support this channel, what I got going on, I got donation links down below, CashApp, Venmo, and Give, Send, Go. This channel's not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. It runs solely off of your guys' generous donations. So if you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, those links are below. Thank you guys for your support. You guys make all of this happen. And when the world goes crazy and we have a week or past several weeks, honestly, like we have, it definitely makes it so we can try and get as much of that information out as possible. So thank you guys for your blessings and your support. I certainly appreciate it. So thank you for that. All right. My shirt is sitting on me funny and I don't like it. Sorry. Anyways, it is Saturday, and we usually do the Wretched Weather Report on Saturday, but because we have so much stuff going on, we're going to go ahead and skip that this Saturday. Yes, I kid you not. We're going to go ahead and skip that, and we're going to get straight into the meat of all this stuff. Is Patrick in the chat? Is he around? I don't know if Patrick made it tonight. I don't see him. He's usually the tab watcher. Oh yeah, there he is. Cut the shirt tag. It's not the tag, man. It's the shirt was sitting on me funny. But Patrick's there. I know he's the tab watcher, and he'll probably blow his mind when we see what we got going on tonight. I told you guys it's gonna be a long one. Yeah, I don't like labels in my shirts either. anyways, I'm glad shirts from the progression of clothing making. I'm glad that we have moved on from those stupid tags, and we don't have those in shirts anymore. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get into this. And we're going to start off with what's going on in Iran. I'm sure most of you have paid somewhat of a bit of attention of what's been happening over there in Iran. A lot of interesting things coming out of there. I word it that way in particular because my oh my, trying to figure out what on earth is actually real and what's not going on over there is crazy. But yeah, so in case you guys don't know, that just jumped. That was weird. In case you guys don't know, there is it's now officially being deemed a revolution. It was initially a protest, then it went from a protest to an uprising, and then it went from uprising to it's now being declared a revolution that's happening in Iran, and it's a total uprising against the Islamic Republic. Yeah, pretty interesting to pay attention to what's going on there. I'll tell you what, I got to start off by saying this. My guess was 2026 was going to be the time of total, revamp power shift in the entire world. I was not expecting it to get started this fast. This is ridiculous what's going on. We're only 10 days into the new year, and look at what's happening to the power structure in the world right now. If you're not paying attention, you're going to be hit by surprise later. I'll tell you what. So there's the uprising, revolution, whatever you want to call it. It's going on in Iran right now. And we're getting reports that says Iranian hospitals overwhelmed with injuries as protests rage across Islamic Republic. I think the death toll has reached 200 so far of what's being reported. But what's being reported now is kind of difficult because of something we'll talk about in a second. So staffs at hospitals in Iran said that their facilities have become overwhelmed with injuries, including of people suffering from gunshot wounds, as anti-government protests are raging across the Islamic Republic. A doctor from Tehran's Farabi Hospital said in the city's main eye specialist center, told the BBC late Friday that the facility entered crisis mode with emergency services slammed and non-urgent admissions suspended. A medic from a hospital in the city of Shiraz also told the network that large numbers of injured people were being brought in despite the hospital not having enough surgeons to treat them. He added that many of those wounded had gunshot injuries to the head and eyes, according to the BBC. As of Saturday, the death toll of the protests has grown to at least 72 people. I'm getting mainly reports of 200, so I don't know what's going on with that. Again, this is where we start getting into the issue of what's true and what's not. That's very important. And it says with over 2,300 others detained, according to U.S.-based human rights activist news agency, so on and so forth. So we've got that going on. And depending on what's legit and what's not, it's there's a lot of regions in Iran that's on fire right now. And so the reason why I'm talking about what can we believe and what we can't, a lot of it has to do with this. It says, as protests rage, Iran pulls the plug on contact with the world. It says just after 8 p.m. Thursday, Iran's theocracy pulled the plug and disconnected the Islamic Republic's 85 million people from the rest of the world. Following a playbook used by both demonstrations and in war, Iran severed the internet connections and telephone lines that connect its people to the vast diaspora in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere. They shut down cell service, phone lines, and internet in the country. And yet we're still getting a whole bunch of stuff coming out everywhere of videos and images and stuff like that in the heart of Iran from just random people that would not have access to be able to get this stuff out. So we have the issue of, can we believe the things that are going out? And I always warn, first of all, in times of crisis, that's when sensationalist and propaganda and false information explodes. And we got to be very careful about that. Then you add into the fact that this is in the Middle East, that's already a hard enough spot to get truthful information to begin with. You add those things together, and it makes it much, 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 much more difficult to be able to get information. I'm seeing tons of video. Sorry, one second. There we go. Getting tons of video that's 3, 4. I've seen one that's 6 years old, and they're reusing that as check out what's going on in Iran right now. And it's stuff that may have been from past Iranian riots that were happening. It's stuff that's going on from different parts of the world that's not even in Iran. And they're just getting all this information, all these videos from old videos, edited videos. Plus, we haven't even talked about the whole AI situation. That makes it that much harder. And so they're taking all that old stuff and edited stuff and everything like that, and they're putting it out as what's going on now. That makes everything so much more difficult to actually really know what's happening there. So we've got to be very careful that we're just not jumping on to the emotional train of whatever comes across social media. I'll tell you what, social media is such a problem because people don't check, they don't vet, because it's so much easier to get an emotional reaction out of somebody and have them just click the reshare button without looking it up, because it's, look at this, and all of a sudden it spreads like wildfire, and it's not true. And this is causing serious problems, not only in Iran, but in a whole bunch of other stuff. We'll talk about something that happened as well that this is also playing a part in. It goes on to say, Thursday's decision sharply limits people from sharing images and witness accounts of the nationwide protest over Iran's ailing economy that have grown to pose the biggest challenge in the government in years. Now, this is the other thing I want you to pay attention to when it comes to this. Iran, they're saying that these protests it's always followed in the mainstream media, followed by the economy. It's the economy. It's the economy. It's the economy. It's the economy, the cost of living and the condition of living and stuff like that. While that is true, while that's a part of this, all the westernized media is putting that tag on there saying this is solely about the economy. And it's not. There's multiple aspects to this. Is the economy part of it? Yes, it is. But there's a lot more to it. But here in the Western world, they just want to make it about one thing because they don't want to take it in another direction and deal with a whole hotbed that comes along with it when it comes to the Islamic stuff. And then we got this. It says even Starlink is likely being jammed. This is the third time Iran has shut down the internet from the outside world. The first was in 2019 when demonstrators angry about a spike in government subsidized gasoline prices took to the streets. Over 300 people were reportedly killed. Then came the protest over the 2022 death of Mahsa Amini following her arrest by the country's morality police over allegedly not wearing her hijab or headscarf to the liking of authorities. A month-long crackdown killed more than 500 people on that one. I'm sure you guys remember that. Stupid pop-ups. I'm sure you guys remember that one. That was a pretty hot topic when that happened. It says, however, Starlink receivers are facing challenges since its 12-day war with Israel last June. Iran has been disrupting GPS signals, likely in a bid to make drones less effective. Starlink receivers use GPS signals to position themselves to connect to a constellation of low-orbit satellites. And so even Starlink appears to be getting jammed over there. So again, be careful at what you're seeing, because if it's people coming out saying, look at this fresh new video out of Iran, well, how on earth did they get it out? That's the question. Is it possible? It is, but it makes it much, much, much more difficult with the internet and cell service and landlines all being down. This is sparking stuff all across the world as well. This is protester scales. Iranian embassy in London tears down regime flag, hoists pre-revolution symbol. Solidarity protests with Iranian demonstrators have erupted in major European cities, including Paris and Berlin. And you can see the dude, he went, this is in London, went to the Iranian embassy there, pulled down the Iranian flag and put up the lion flag. Says the anti-regime protester scaled the balcony of Iran's embassy in London on Friday and tore down the Islamic Republicans. Wow. Tore down the Islamic Republic's flag. Slip of the tongue or Freudian slip, you choose. Replacing it with Iran's pre-1979 lion and sun emblem. The demonstrator climbed the front of the embassy building in Kensington before ripping down the regime's flag and hoisting the historic symbol associated with Iran's monarchy. We'll get to that in just a second. Prior to the 1979 Islamic Revolution, as large crowds of anti-regime protesters carried on. 2 people were arrested for this. No confirmation if the dude who actually did it was arrested, but 2 people were arrested for this show. Okay. And then we also have this. This is where we start getting more depth to what's going on. It's not just about the economy. We're getting some depth to this. It says neither Gaza nor Lebanon. Iranian unrest is about more than just the economy. Protesters reject the Islamic Republic's whole rationale. And that's what I'm talking about when it comes to this being more than the economy. This is people outright rejecting the Islamic Republic and everything that comes along with it. It says a familiar slogan has echoed through the streets of various Iranian cities in recent days. Neither Gaza nor Lebanon. I sacrificed my life for Iran. It says, but as an expert of Iranian history, this is this dude, Cameron, what's his name? Where's that? Cameron Talatov. That's what he does. He's one of these guys. It says, but as an expert in Iranian history and culture, I believe that the slogan's presence signals that protests go deeper than economic frustration alone. When people in Iran chant neither Gaza nor Lebanon, they are, I believe, rejecting the theocratic system in Iran entirely. In other words, the current crisis isn't just about bread and jobs, it's about who decides what Iran stands for. The phrase, neither Gaza nor Lebanon, I sacrificed my life in Iran, first gained prominence during the 2009 Green Movement, when hundreds of thousands of people protested a disputed presidential election in Iran. So that's where that comes from with that. It also says it has since appeared in successive major demonstrations from the 2017-18 economic protests to the 2019 fuel price uprising. It was also prominent during the 2022 Women Life Freedom Movement, sparked by the death of Iranian Kurdish woman Mahsa Amini, following her detention by Iran's morality police for not wearing a proper hijab. The phrase ties together two key aspects of successive Iranian protest movements: domestic, economic, political, or social grievances, and an explicit rejection of the government's justification for that hardship, namely that sacrifice at home is necessarily to fulfill ideological goals of resistance abroad. Basically, what this is people are rejecting the idea of why are we sacrificing our life here in order to finance both the Islamic Republic's elite group as well as the terrorist organizations all around the world that aren't contributing to anything that we believe in or fulfilling anything in our life. And so that's what they're rejecting, which is interesting because for two reasons. One, if we want to look at this from the future prophetic spiritual side of things, we understand for this mystery religion to come together and become the one world religion, while Islam, the Muslim belief comes from the mystery religion, it's still the one that just will not coexist with all of the other ones. So it has to be eliminated in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not outright destroyed, but it has to become so insignificant that it's not even a blip on the radar when the time comes of that formation of that religion. So we know something has to happen to Islam when that in that time period between now and the abomination of desolation. It has to happen in between there. Two, if you want to take it from the more material side, we know that based upon the Freemasons' 3 world wars that they want to do, the third one has yet to come, which we're starting to see things build up in that direction, where their idea is to pin and start World War III from the state of Israel and the Muslim Brotherhood. That's how they want to start the Third World War, and their goal for doing so will, according to their own writings, will eliminate both the Jewish belief structure as well as outright destroy all of Islam. Well, we know the Jewish belief structure is not going to be destroyed, but we can confirm that Islam will be destroyed because we know that it has to fulfill the mystery religion into the one world religion at that point. So we're starting to see something where maybe this uprising is going to contribute to that in some way, shape, or form. Maybe. We don't know. But the other aspect that we got to pay attention to is even if it does, even if the new regime comes in, total takeover, the Islamic Republic is defeated and so on and so forth, we know Iran does play a part in the future invasion in Ezekiel 38. So we do know that that's going to play a part as well. So there's multiple factors of this. We don't want to get hung up on one way or the other, but we can confirm that things are moving, whether they're going to be progressing towards what we know it's going to progress towards, or this is just another stepping stone to something else we don't necessarily know quite yet. So we definitely got to keep that in mind. Whew. All right. And then it says, in particular, the slogan targets the Islamic Republic's decades-long support for Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza. Understanding the full meaning of the slogan requires historical context. Under the U.S.-aligned Pahlavi monarchy, which ruled from 1925 to 1979, Iran maintained diplomatic and economic ties with Israel while pursuing modernization. Hang on to that. Hang on to that. It says the Shah's opponents, particularly leftist groups, exploited these connections using slogans like Iran's become Palestine, why sit still, O people, to mobilize against the monarchy. Indeed, many of the Islamic revolutionary leaders that ousted the Shah in 1979 had ties with the Palestinian groups. After the revolution, the Islamic Republic inverted both its ties to the United States and Iran's late relationship with Israel, making anti-Israel rhetoric and support for the Palestinian causes central to its identity. So, if you're following history and you're following the beliefs of these structures, if this revolution, as they're calling it, was to succeed, they would remove that Islamic Republic, ultimately removing the barrier between Iran and United States and Israel in regards to that, and makes things pretty interesting for future events. It says Iran's support for the Hezbollah during Lebanon's civil war, its backing of Hamas and the Palestinians group fight against Israel, and its involvement in Syrian and Iraqi conflicts have contributed to international sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and economic pressure on Iran. And these burdens have fallen disproportionately to ordinary citizens rather than the ruling elite. So basically, since the Islamic Republic took over, they started taking all the money from the citizens to fuel the terrorist groups outside of the country, which then brought heat upon the country with sanctions, which also then started hurting the citizens, not the elites at that point. And so because of the actions of the terrorism and the uprising of this belief structure all around the world, basically it's caused nothing but pain and suffering for the citizens underneath who don't really want to go along with it to begin with. They were just put under the thumb of it. It says economic crisis and political defiance. Down with the Islamic Republic is also being chanted alongside neither Gaza nor Lebanon in the current uprising. The most serious that the Iranian government has faced in years. It says, but neither lethal force or the arrests nor the threats from the leader Ali Khamenei has basically stopped this uprising, revolution, whatever you want to call it, as of now. So that's the other aspect to this. So there's definitely some interesting perspectives for this. We'll see what happens. Again, we just got to keep an eye on what's going to happen. We don't necessarily know the outcome of this, but we know for future events, something's got to change. Just like the status quo of the world, something has to change. And so that's what we're watching for. And so here comes the United States shoving their rockets in the middle of all of this. It says Trump says protest hit Iran in big trouble, or Trump says protest hit Iran is in big trouble again threatening strikes. My word, come on. It says U.S. President Donald Trump said on January 9th that Iran, faced with major protests, was in big trouble, and again warned that he could order military strikes. Iran's in big trouble. It looks to me like the people are taking over certain cities that nobody thought were really possible just a few weeks ago. Trump said, asked on his message to Iran's leader, Trump said, you better not start shooting because we'll start shooting too. It says, if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get involved, he said. That doesn't mean boots on the ground, but it means hitting them very, very hard where it hurts. And so this is where we start getting into another aspect of this. Is this a purely organic uprising of Iranian citizens, or are there actors behind the scenes that have either orchestrated the beginnings of it, or they saw what was happening and then started adding fuel to the fire? And so with the United States coming on board with this, saying that we'll strike if they start going against the protesters, you start to wonder, especially when we start seeing stuff like this. Trump reposts Lindsey Graham's tweet warning Iran brutality against own people will not go unchallenged. And it says Graham's scathing message was in response to Secretary of State Marco Rubio's own message of support to Iran's civilians earlier Saturday. It says President Trump shared a tweet from U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham. I guess Lindsey Graham's good now all of a sudden, because I remember all the years past, everybody was complaining about Lindsey Graham, saying that he's a rhino and he's a warmonger and he has all these types of things. But now all of a sudden, he's good just because Trump is buddy with him. Funny how that happens. It says Trump shared a tweet from Senator Lindsey Graham Saturday, A tweet warning Tehran that its brutality against its own people will not go unchallenged. This is not the Obama administration when it comes to standing up to the Iranian Ayatollah and his religious Nazi henchmen. That's funny coming from you. And standing behind the people of Iran protesting for a better life. A South Carolina politician, wrote on Saturday, to the regime leadership, your brutality against the great people of Iran will not go unchallenged. Make Iran great again. Iranians inside the Islamic Republic have been protesting against the repressive regime for 2 weeks, as more than 200 demonstrators are believed to be dead. So again, we got reports of 200 here. The United States supports the brave people of Iran, Rubio wrote early Saturday morning. Solidarity stance comes after the Iranian regime threatened Saturday that it would consider demonstrators enemies of God, which is a crime that carries the death penalty in Iran. Trump pledged his allegiance to the people of Iran earlier this week and warned Tehran to spare the lives of its people. You better not start shooting because we'll start shooting too. In response, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei accused Trump of having hands stained with the blood of Iranians in remarks aired Friday. And the leaders of France, Britain, and Germany have also publicly condemned the regime slaughtering protesters, but stopped short of threatening of retaliation. Of course they did, because Europe is weak as all get out. So this is where we start getting some interesting stuff. Is this being fueled? Was this being orchestrated? I tend to lean, if you want my personal opinion, that's all it is, personal opinion, I believe that this uprising has been an orchestration event for quite a while now. I don't believe this is something where they just happened to see a crisis come up and then they grabbed a hold of it. I think that they helped fuel this thing, but that's my perspective. Everybody has their own. So this was Lindsey Graham. He says to the Iranian people, your long nightmare is soon coming to a close. Your bravery and determination to end your oppression has been noticed by the president and all who love freedom. Yeah, they love freedom, all right, for themselves. When Trump said make Iran great again, it means that the protesters in Iran must prevail over the Ayatollah. This is the clearest signal yet that Trump, understands Iran will never be great with the Ayatollah and his henchmen in charge. To all who are sacrificing Iran, God bless. Help is on the way. And then on January 5th, Lindsey Graham posted this with him and Trump with the Make Iranian Great Again hat signed by Donald Trump. Take that and do with it what you will. And then we also have this. This was an interview on Fox News. Lindsey Graham talking about what's going on in Iran. Let's hear from the clown himself, shall we?
So I pray and hope that 2026 will be the year that we make Iran great again.
You can't tell me that this theater type of stuff is not part of the plan. And I can't help but look at the dude on the left, and all I see is one of the bad guys from a Spy Kids movie. If you guys have seen Spy Kids, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because he looks dead on like it. Anyways, low-hanging fruit. Now, with that, there's already a leader ready to go. And guess what? That leader is friends with none other than Trump and Netanyahu. And this is where, if you're questioning if this was orchestrated or not, this is where you should start seeing a brighter light telling you something. Because it says, son of Iran's late Shah issues urgent call for Trump to intervene. Remember the monarchy that got overthrown by the Islamic Republic? Well, this is the son of that guy, and he's ready to step in and take control of Iran again. Make it great again. It says Reza Pahlavi urged President Trump to intervene in Iran amid ongoing protests, citing an internet blackout and potential violence. Pahlavi called on Iranians to fight for their freedom and overwhelm the security forces. So he's fueling it, kind of like Trump sitting on the sidelines during January 6th, fueling the people to go and do it. Interesting. And of course, somebody's going to take that and go, oh, so you're defending the Islamic Republic? Yeah, sure, that's what I'm doing. I'm just telling you what's going on, that's all. And nothing is ever as it seems. It says, overwhelmed security forces claiming Trump's threats have deterred the regime. Trump has threatened military action if Iran harms protesters, referencing a past coordinated bombing of Iranian nuclear sites. The exiled son of Iran's late Shah on January 9th appealed to U.S. President Donald Trump to intervene urgently as protests persisted in the Islamic Republic. Mr. President, this is an urgent and immediate call for your attention, support, and action. Mr. Reza Pahlavi, there we go, wrote on social media, please be prepared to intervene to help the people of Iran. I have called the people to the streets to fight for freedom and overwhelm the security forces with sheer numbers. Last night they did that, he wrote. Your threat to this criminal regime has also kept the regime's thugs at bay. But this time of essence, the people will be on the streets again in an hour, and I'm asking you to help. Worth noting that Pahlavi here currently resides in Washington, D.C. Worth noting on that. Now, this is where we start getting some other stuff that could be playing a part in all this. It says the Israeli influence operation aiming to install Reza Pahlavi as Shah of Iran. So we're getting some more information that could be telling us that something is actually being, or strings being pulled. It says in early 2023, Reza Pahlavi made his first official visit to Israel. He's the son, this came out in October, by the way, October 2025. It says official visit to Israel. He's the son of the last Shah of Iran, who was overthrown in 1979 Islamic revolution and was replaced by the Ayatollah regime. The visit by Iranian crown prince, a title mentioned by the Israeli host, then intelligence minister and current science minister Gila Gamil, that's not how you pronounce that, the best I got, was covered by the Israeli media, including Haaretz reporting. Reporters echoed the official line. The visit was proof that there was no animosity between the Israeli and Iranian peoples, but only between the Israeli government and the regime and Tehran. That's pretty much true. It's there's no issues between the Israelis and the Iranians. It's the regimes that control them that there's the problem. We can all agree on that, I think. It says, while Pahlavi enjoys some popularity among the Iranian expat community, it's far from clear that Iranians want him as leader. That has now changed. It's quite clear that that's the decision that the people have made. Again, this was written before all this stuff took place. It says, the son of a former dictator who enjoyed Israeli and American patronage. True. He carried the political baggage of his father. I don't necessarily know anything about that. Whose rule was not only for his openness to Western culture, true, but also for corruption, political repression, and torture of regime opponents. That's true as well. If you guys want to do a little digging around his dad, not exactly the best guy, to be honest. There's a lot of lawsuits going on still to this day regarding that. So go take a look if you want to. But unlike his father, Reza carries messages of peace, democracy, and human rights. When asked at a press conference alongside Gamil how the Iranian people would shake off the Ayatollah's rule, he repeated in fluent English the message he has been delivering for decades. From Lech Walesa, Poland to Mandela, South Africa, many successful campaigns have been based on nonviolent civil resistance as a method for delivering change, in other words, without outside interference. He said. Then he paused, raised a finger, and qualified his statement. But the key element is that none of these movements could have been succeeded without some element of international support, as he said, justifying his visit to Israel. We've seen what the Mossad and the CIA can do in the past. Pretty sure that they could spark an uprising if they wanted to install this guy. If they wanted to. It says, when asked about the responses he was getting to visit Israel, Iran's archenemy, he said reactions had been largely positive. He also referred reporters to his social media accounts. Don't take my word for it. Search on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and any platform. He said, it turns out that a large-scale digital influence campaign in Persian was underway, operated out of Israel and funded by a private entity that receives government support. The campaign campaign promotes Pahlavi's public image and amplifies calls for restoring the monarchy. The campaign relies on avatars, fake online personas posing as Iranian citizens on social media. They were the first discovered by social media researchers in Israel and abroad. So basically, there is a giant social media campaign being funded by Israel to promote regime change in Iran and to install Pahlavi as in his position and restore the monarchy, which is interesting because a lot of people would say, well, they're not doing that. There's no way Israel's doing that. Well, the problem is if you rewind a few months back, we went over and we verified that Israel's doing the exact same thing. They've admitted it, publicly admitted it, with documentation that they are doing the exact same thing here in the United States to rid anti-Semitism and promote the state of Israel. And so if they're doing it here, why wouldn't they be doing it there to do this? It says, according to the sources who spoke with the marker in Haaretz, since the outbreak of the war in Gaza and after Pahlavi's visit, an online operation began operating as part of an even broader Israeli campaign to influence the social media discourse, which also includes campaign in English and German. According to 5 sources with direct knowledge of the project, native Persian speakers are recorded for the operation. 3 of the sources confirmed that the connection between the project and the specific campaign and said that they witnessed the network advancing pro-Pahlavi messaging. According to the sources, the campaign included fake accounts on platforms such as X and Instagram and used artificial intelligence tools to help disseminate key narratives, craft these messages, and generate content. According to 2 of the sources, they were also efforts to amplify the posts of Pahlavi's ally in Israel, Gamaliel, and a minister from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party. This would confirm why the United States and Trump and Lindsey Graham and stuff are so behind all of this at the same time as all of this. This screams. I'm not saying it's 100% true because we don't know, but this screams orchestration. Then we have this. Take with this what you will. Turkish foreign minister accuses Mossad of stoking Iran protests, says Netanyahu aims for regional conflict. He says that the Mossad is not hiding this and referring to involvement in protests. They are calling on the Iranian people to rise up against the regime through their internet and Twitter accounts. Now, most people would immediately write this off because it's the dude from Turkey, and we know how Turkey views Israel and all that type of stuff. But again, history shows us that this is very much not only possible, but highly likely it's happening because we know Israel doesn't want that group in there. They don't want Iran in there. We know that there's a giant risk board across the world right now between countries and leaders. They're all friends. They're all working together. But it is true that Israel and Iran hate each other. That is legitimate. And so they don't want him in there, so why not grab a hold of this? Even if it's not orchestrated, that doesn't mean that they're not seeing fire and throwing fuel on it and grabbing a hold of it. So again, we got to look at history and facts and evidence and leave our emotional response behind when it comes to this. This Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan accused the Mossad of using ongoing protests in Iran to destabilize the Islamic Republic in a Saturday interview. An extended interview with Turkish television, Fidan addressed recent developments in Iran and mounting regional tensions, repeatedly criticizing Israel for what is described as involvement in unrest. Of course, he's angry because they like the regime in Iran. So, of course, he's angry. You got to, again, look at just the evidence and the history and stuff and not necessarily latch onto that. It says he argued that Israel's deliberately working to take advantage of Iran's internal challenges. Turkey would do the same thing if they had an opportunity to do so, including economic hardship. Actually, they have done it in the past. Go look at what's going on in Libya, since Turkey pretty much owns Libya. It says including economic hardship to weaken the regime. Actions, he said, are being carried out openly. The Mossad is not hiding this, Fidan said, referring to the protests. They are calling on the Iranian people to rise up against the regime through their internet and Twitter accounts. Again, that could also play a part into the fake avatars that we just went over. Fidan said that past overt military attacks have united the Iranian public against external threats, whereas today's situation is different. According to him, Israel views the absence of active conflict as an opportunity to deepen domestic dissent within Iran. Makes sense to me. So, Pretty interesting. So take that with what you want on that as well. Then we also have this that's coming out as well. Don't know why that's like that. It says Israel planning new Gaza City op in March, but will need okay from Trump and officials. Netanyahu had IDF devised contingency plan to take over more of the Strip's territory, as he doesn't believe the U.S. will manage to secure Hamas or to secure Hamas's disarmament. Arab tells Times of Israel. The Israeli Defense Forces have drawn up plans to launch renewed intensive military operations in Gaza in March, with an offensive targeting Gaza City aimed at pushing the Yellow Line ceasefire demarcation west towards the coast of the enclave, further expanding the IDF's control of this territory. An Israeli official and an Arab diplomat told the Times of Israel on Saturday. The Arab diplomat said that the operation will not be able to go forward without the support of the United States, which is still trying to advance the fragile ceasefire agreement in October to a second phase that includes Hamas's disarmament. While Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed during this meeting with Trump last month to cooperate with efforts to advance the ceasefire, he does not believe that they will be successful in disarming Hamas, and has accordingly directed the IDF to prepare a contingency plan. So why that's important is because if you start dismantling and reinstalling an entire new regime over in Iran, then you can start getting rid of all of the proxy groups that are connected to it, as well as we know Hamas was funded and trained by Mossad as well. We've gone over that information. So they're still trying to clean out that mess because they don't need them anymore. And all of a sudden you've got the Middle East that's opening up. And then we know that the United States just struck Israel, or not Israel. That would be really weird. No, they just struck Syria to hit some ISIS places. And we know just a few days ago on Tuesday, the Royal Air Force in France also struck ISIS over in Syria as well. So there's a lot of movement, a lot of power shifting happening over there in the Middle East right now. It's not just here in the Western world that's happening. But this is where things are going to start getting interesting because we don't necessarily know how all of this will play out. Either way, with all this going on, there are a bunch of innocent people over there in Iran right now that are, even if they're not participating in the uprising, they're caught in the crossfire of this. They don't have any power. They don't have any way of working. They don't have any way of gathering food. And there's a lot of innocent lives over there caught in the crossfire of this. Revolutions are always messy. They are not something where it's like, let's just go take care of this. We're in and out, done, take care of it stuff. This stuff, it's messy. So pray for those over there. Over there in that region. So there's a lot of people over there kind of caught in the crossfire of all this. So this is going to be interesting. We'll see what happens. I tell you what, man, if this is successful and they manage to do an entire change, kick out the Islamic Republic, it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. I hope people realize that. It's not that quick. But if they manage to do that, kick out the Islamic Republic, that causes a massive weakening of Islam worldwide. Then they can install this dude in there who is obviously connected to the same controllers as Trump and Netanyahu. So we've got that going on. So where does the Iranian-Russian relationship go with that situation and future events and stuff is anybody's guess. Of course, that's just going to spark nothing but months and months and months of pure speculation. So all these talking heads and prophecy teachers can just pump out as much clickbaity content as they want because they can just speculate till the cows come home or the red heifers come home, I guess I should say. But yeah, so don't get caught up in that. Let's just take it one step at a time and see what happens. And again, be very, very careful about the information coming out. First of all, Middle East information is just next to impossible to try and figure out what is true and what is not. Then you add in the fact of a crisis with a blackout of internet and everything like that. Then it's hard. So just be careful. Just be careful. All right, man. We still got a ton of stuff to get through, so we're just going ahead and keep on going. I apologize if we just start shooting through this stuff, but we got a lot of stuff to get through. Let's keep rocking and rolling, shall we? So, update on Venezuela. This came out of nowhere today from the embassy out of Venezuela. It says, security alert Venezuela. Do not travel to Venezuela. And if you're already there, depart immediately. As we know, this transition with Venezuela is not going smooth. Delcy Rodriguez is continuing to push forward against the United States. At least she's saying so publicly. Gangs and other quote unquote government authorities and guerrilla groups are running rampant all across the streets of Venezuela. There's a ton of protests going out there, both pro and anti-Maduro on the streets. Everything is absolute chaos in Venezuela right now because that's what happens when you go and do what you did. And so out of nowhere, we got the U.S. Embassy that's saying, don't go there. And if you're there, get out. Are they planning something else? Who knows? We don't necessarily know. But they are indeed issuing a warning about the Venezuela situation. Then on top of that, getting an update when it comes to the Venezuela oil and the money coming from it. Trump's claim to Venezuela oil money draws scrutiny in Congress. Democrats say that the president cannot take money from the proceeds of seized oil and control it himself, calling it a slush fund that would fly in the face of the Constitution. If you guys don't know, Trump came out and said that all of the money that's coming in from Venezuela oil, he himself will control. Fascinating. This is President Trump's declaration that he would personally control the proceeds from oil produced in Venezuela drew instant condemnation on Wednesday from Democrats in Congress, who noted that the president has no constitutional authority for such an undertaking. The president cannot grab Venezuela's oil for his own slush fund, period. This is Van Hollen. It says the bottom line is this: their plan is insane. Chris Murphy said, it says take Venezuela oil at gunpoint and use it to run the country from D.C. America is nation building again. While the administration plans for handling what could be billions of dollars of revenue from oil sales, that's not going swimmingly either. We don't have time to cover that today. Maybe on Tuesday. This is handling what could be billions of dollars from oil revenue or from revenue from oil sales are still taking shape. Trump announced on Tuesday that he intended to determine how the money is distributed. This oil will be sold at its market price, and that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States, Trump said on social media. Right. I'm not buying that for a second, that you're going to do something good with that for you to personally control it. Well, it's interesting because Trump's "I'll control the money" Venezuela oil claim. What do some lawyers, constitutional lawyers, have to say about this? Since the Trump administration says that it will sell Venezuelan oil at market prices and oversee the allocation of the proceeds. Trump framed it as the new presidential stream. It basically says the oil will be sold at market price and that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America. Having already demonstrated a disregard for Congress's power of the purse, the president's controlled by me framing raised eyebrows. The executive branch can administer programs and executive laws, but it generally cannot create a new source of funding and then decide how to spend it. Why? Because we have a checks and balances system here. You can't just build a new fund and go, well, I'm going to oversee that fund. That's not how it works. This is the Miscellaneous Receipts Act stipulates that if the government receives money, it must be deposited into the Treasury, not some custom-made account for discretionary presidential use. That's the problem, because the Department of Energy was the one that's making a statement on this. The Treasury's not even making a statement. The Department of Energy came out and said that they're going to have that money not go to the U.S. Treasury, but they're going to actually do it to offshore bank accounts and then controlled by the president. Yeah. Even if you could get past the deposit question, the Anti-Deficiency Act, the ADA, would come into play. The ADA generally bars federal officials from obligating or spending money in advance or excess of appropriations. So even if the executive branch is holding the money, that legal authority allows it to disperse the funds for purposes Congress has not appropriated, ? Yeah, that's not how it works. Still, the Department of Energy's statements offers a clue. All proceeds from the sale of Venezuela crude oil and oil products will first settle in U.S.-controlled accounts at globally recognized banks to guarantee the legitimacy and integrity of the ultimate distribution of proceeds. You know who runs countries this way? terrorist groups like Iran. There's been multiple terrorist groups that are connected to governments that this is exactly what they do. They go and they steal something from another country. They put it into private offshore bank accounts, and that's how they funnel their money. Trump wants to do the exact same thing with Venezuelan oil. So there's a plausible way for the administration to, quote unquote, control the proceeds while avoiding treating them as federal receipts in the first place, running it through the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Asset Control, or OFAC, which administers sanctions programs and can block assets tied to sanctioned parties and then license certain transactions under specified terms. Instead of treating the money as federal revenue, the administration could consider the proceeds as Venezuelan-owned frozen funds and U.S.-controlled bank accounts, and then spend the money by authorizing specific transfers via OFAC licenses. The government would control the movement of the money, deciding what transfers are permitted and under what conditions. So basically what they're saying is if they designate it in the OFAC department, they're not saying that it's actually U.S. money at that point. What they're saying is it's sanctioned foreign money that's now going into an account, which then they can move in whatever direction that they want to. It's a way to get around the law. This administration going around the law, they never do that, ever. No, they want to never do that. Says, in other words, the administration wouldn't spend taxpayer dollars. Instead, it would authorize the release of Venezuela's frozen money and use that licensing power to steer the money where it wants to. So wherever Trump wants it to go. A concern is that the enormous sums can be effectively allocated through sanctions licensing decisions. You've created a quasi-budget process inside the executive branch, but without the usual appropriations transparency, committee oversight, and the statutory program constraints. So even if the OFAC route isn't technically federal spending, it can function as such. If that's where this is headed, the central question isn't just, is it legal? It's also, do we want sanctioned licensing to become a substitute for appropriations, especially when the president openly sells it as personal control over the money? If they're going to do that with Venezuela oil, who says they can't do it with doing it with any other country that they decide to go? Let's go Cuba. Okay, let's go Mexico. Let's do that. Let's go Greenland. Let's just take that. We're going to freeze their money. We're not going to put it into the treasury, and then we're going to control all of that in our own personal accounts, and Trump makes the decisions on it. Do you see where there's a problem? There's no checks and balances in regards. Then today, Trump declares state of emergency to protect Venezuela oil funds held by the United States. The president said that the U.S. wants control over Caracas petroleum production and trade. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order blocking courts and creditors from laying claim to Venezuelan oil sales revenue held in U.S. Treasury accounts. So basically, it seems like they're going the OFAC route, which that would still be a part of a U.S. Treasury account at that point once the money goes through, and that means that courts and creditors can go and lay claim to that. So, all of the companies that Trump has claimed that Venezuela stole all that oil from and everything like that, he is blocking those companies from getting their money back by doing this. So he lied again. Since the White House said on Friday that the move constitutes a national emergency aimed at preserving the funds to advance U.S. foreign policy objectives in the region, Trump said U.S. companies would gain access to oil production in Venezuela, whose president, Nicolas Maduro, was abducted along with his wife during a U.S. commando raid on a compound in Caracas last week. Venezuela condemned the operation as a gross violation of sovereignty. The order blocks any attachment, judgment, decree, lien, execution, garnishment, or other judicial process against Venezuelan oil and diluent sales revenue held by the Treasury, the White House said. It added that losing control over the funds would empower malign actors like Iran and Hezbollah and directly jeopardize U.S. objectives. Interesting, because that's exactly what he's copying here, is the same system that Iran and Hezbollah has been using. You just can't make this stuff up. Let's not forget, with all of this was August 19th of this year, the DEA laundered $19 million of cartel drug money into cash and crypto. Since for over a decade, the DEA ran a money laundering operation for a Colombian narcotics trafficking cartel. In total, the agency and its sources took in $19 million in drug money, funneling cash into bank and cryptocurrency accounts controlled by sources, agents, and the cartel. At the end of it all, 2 heroin traffickers were charged as a direct result of the operation. That's according to both a source familiar with the investigation and a recently unsealed seizure warrant, which shows that the DEA was deeply embedded in the cartel's attempt to evade law enforcement, both in shifting old school fiat currencies and digital alternatives. The DOJ declined to comment. You shocked? While 2 arrests may not seem like a good return for so many years of effort, former federal agents told Forbes that there were likely potential investigations, I can read, I promise, that benefited from the undercover operation. Besides, they said if the government had, listen to this, if the government hadn't laundered money for the cartels to get investigative insight and eventually get the funds into its own hands, the work would have been done by criminals with more nefarious intent. So basically what they're saying, we did the illegal thing with the drug cartels to launder money, so somebody else didn't. That's their defense. But remember, this government is the one that's saving us from the cartels and the drugs and so on and so forth. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. Oh my goodness. This is the world we live in. Oh man. You know, it's just it's hard. Sometimes I take some time throughout the week, just on occasion, and I just kind of bounce around and just kind of skim through and check and see what's going on, just to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the prophecy community. It's unfortunate to see how absolutely blind and lost this group, this community is. And I'm not saying that to, put my nose up in the air or anything like that, because I don't have it all figured out either. But they just eat up the narrative that they've been fed. And it's sad. It's really sad. There's been, this week in particular, this week has been insane. And I got to be honest with you guys. This has been one of those weeks where, or the past 2 weeks, past 2-3 weeks, because it's been crazy the past couple weeks. But this is just one of those things where there's just so much going on. I'm trying so hard to make sure that things aren't falling through the cracks. And I'm telling you guys everything that I can, giving you guys the information that I can, because I know there's a lot of you, I've heard from a lot of you where it's, you don't go anywhere else. You don't trust the regular media. You don't trust the other, people who speak on it and stuff like that. You just come, and I don't take that responsibility lightly. I hope you guys realize that. I really don't. I mean, it's something that it's a weight on me, and I'm thankful for that weight, that responsibility, because I know that's what the Lord wants me to do, and I understand that. So don't take that as a bad thing, but just realize that I take it very seriously. I do. And so I'm trying my best. And it's not just to make sure that I'm covering everything and just, giving you guys everything, but it's also trying to make sure that I'm getting depth on everything. So we know the context, we know where it's coming from, we know where the history is coming, where the history is at on it. And so I'm trying to give you guys all that I can. So I'm trying. Thank you. Thank you for understanding. But when I see so many out there just plodding along with the narratives that they're feeding, it hurts. It does. It hurts. I want to help them, but they won't listen. And when I think on my scale, my tiny, insignificant scale of what I see regarding those who are lost, I can only imagine how it feels for God when there's so many people that just outright reject him. What I feel in regards is nothing compared to the pain that I know he feels from his own creation, people that he has a love for that we can't even understand, that outright reject him. And I know that it hurts. Just a perspective to think on with that. Okay. Let's move over to China. China. We need a little fun here. There we go. Oh, yes, China. So Trump says Venezuela does not give China a. Trump says Venezuela does not give China a Taiwan president, but it's up to Xi. Okay. U.S. President Donald Trump says it's up to Chinese President Xi Jinping what China does on Taiwan, but that he would be very unhappy with the change in the status quo, according to an interview with the New York Times published on January 8th. Mr. Xi, considers it to be part of China, and that's up to him what he's going to be doing, Trump told the newspaper on January 7th. The reason why I picked this out and wanted to point this out is if we are witnessing the creation of the hemispheres with controlling powers within them, Russia having their own, United States having their own, China having their own, this would be another signal that Trump is allowing China to go and do what they're doing on that. And I don't mean allowing as in Trump's the shot caller and all this. I don't mean it that way. What I mean is with him saying, well, it's up to Xi at that point. He's basically wiping his hands and going, well, these guys are making their decisions for their hemispheres and they're going to be taking control of whatever they need to at whatever time. And so this is Trump backing off of his earlier policy where he says he will defend Taiwan. Now he's saying, well, it's up to Xi if he wants him. So that's why that's significant. We're seeing more and more bits and pieces of information coming out confirming stuff just like that. And I also find it fascinating. Why does Stephen Miller, Mr. America First, Mr. MAGA dude, Mr. Project 2025, all this stuff, why is it, if he's so pro-United States and anti-China, is the banner of his Twitter account him shaking hands with none other than Xi Jinping? Riddle me that one, Batman. I find that fascinating that somebody who appears to be so anti-China and communists, because that's all he talks about, why is his banner him shaking the hands of Xi Jinping? For those who have been around my channel, you probably already know the answer to that question. If you're new and you're following the mainstream narrative, this may confuse you. Well, it's because they're all in this together, as High School Musical once said. Let's move over to let's move over to Russia and Trump, shall we? Russia praises Trump White House for latest oil tanker move. It says the Russian Foreign Ministry said President Donald Trump has released the two Russian nationals who were part of the crew of the Mariana oil tanker seized in the North Atlantic after it had broken through the U.S. blockade of Venezuela. Maria Zakharova, a spokeswoman for the foreign ministry, said Trump decided to release the pair in response to an appeal from Moscow, which had early accused the United States of an illegal use of force and disputed that it fell under the jurisdictions of Washington's sanctions on Venezuela. We welcome the decision and express our gratitude to the U.S. leadership, Zakharova said on a statement on Friday. We are beginning immediate action on all issues related to ensuring the prompt return of our fellow citizens to their homeland. Says the U.S. European Command, EUCOM, said that the Mariana, originally named Bella 1, was seized on Wednesday because the vessel had violated American sanctions. The Trump administration said that the vessel tried to disguise itself as a Russian vessel to avoid the U.S. sanctions on Venezuela, where the White House is asserting control over the U.S. oil or the oil industry under its Dawn Row Doctrine. That's what it's called now. It says in an interview with Jesse Waters on Fox News that aired Wednesday night, Vice President J.D. Vance said that the Mariana was a fake Russian oil tanker that basically tried to pretend to be a Russian oil tanker in an effort to avoid the sanctions regime. So if you guys don't know about this story, there's just a couple of points that I want to point out. One, if you guys don't know, this was one of the tankers that was on its way out of Venezuela called the Bella 1. This is the one where the United States was tracking it down, chasing it down because they wanted to seize it. And so what they did is they changed their name to Mariana and then put it under the Russian shipping nationale. And basically Russia, their shipping group, this doesn't make it, of course, into the mainstream media, but it did happen. The Russian shipping group over there, the official Russian shipping group, added them as a Russian ship on their shipping docket. They put them in the system as a Russian ship, accepting them as part of their country, which they can do. And so the moment that that happens, it doesn't matter at that point. They're officially a Russian ship, which means that the United States has to back off at that point because of other reasons, sanction reasons and stuff like that. They need to back off. They can't seize a Russian ship that way. But they did anyways. And so in response, what they did is they arrested all of the people on the ship, except they sent back the 2 Russian ones to the country to work out a deal with Russia. That's what's going on with that. The reason why this is important is because it just goes to show that the Trump and Russia are still working together side by side as they always have been. Then we also have this in the same vein. It says, if it expires, it expires. Trump tells New York Times about U.S.-Russia nuclear treaty. This was January 8th that this came out. It says, U.S. President Donald Trump indicated that he would allow the last U.S.-Russia strategic arms control treaty to expire without accepting an offer from Moscow to voluntarily extend its caps on deployment of the world's most powerful nuclear weapons, according to remarks released on Thursday. If it expires, Trump said of the 2010 New START Accord in an interview he gave with the New York Times on Wednesday. We'll just do a better agreement. Arms control advocates fear that the world's 2 biggest nuclear powers will begin deploying strategic warheads beyond the pact's limits after it expires on February 5th, hastening an erosion of the global arms control regime. There are plenty of advocates in the Trump administration for doing exactly that, said Thomas Countryman, a former top State Department arms control official who chairs the board of the Arms Control Association Advocacy Group. The White House spokesperson referred to Reuters to Trump's comments when he asked if he will accept an offer made in September by Russian President Vladimir Putin on the sides of voluntarily maintaining the limits of the strategic nuclear weapons deployment after the New START expires. So if you guys don't know, that agreement limits the United States and Russia to deploying no more than 1,550 warheads on 700 delivery vehicles, missiles, bombers, and submarines. So it's a limit to how many nuclear warheads can be deployed per country. It's kind of an agreement between them. Obviously, 1,550 on both sides. That's enough to blow this world sky high, but still, that's their way of doing it. But basically, Trump told New York Times that China, which has the world's fastest growing strategic nuclear force, should be included in a treaty that replaces the New START. This is pretty interesting, even though they're kind of rejecting it publicly. So take that with what you will. You probably want to get a couple other players involved, also, Trump said. Who might those players be? Is this a part of this hemisphere program that they're working on? Who knows? Because the Chinese embassy in Washington said it would be neither reasonable nor realistic to ask China to join the nuclear disarmament negotiations with the U.S. and Russia. So this is another case of Trump just, you guys take control of your regions, your hemispheres, your backyards, and we're not going to worry about all this stuff because we're all in this together. Anyway. Now, this is interesting. Ukraine awards major lithium project to investors with link to Trump. Not just Trump, though. Ronald S. Lauder, a billionaire friend of Mr. Trump, is among the investors. The move comes as the Trump administration looks to profit from investment opportunities in Ukraine. If that name sounds familiar, we just talked about Ron Lauder on Tuesday. About what? About the fact that Ron Lauder is the one who's a confidant of both Trump and Putin, and has been one of the guys working between them with land swap deals with Ukraine and Greenland and Venezuela. And now all of a sudden, after the Venezuela thing goes down, which all of that stuff's been in the works since 2017, Ron Lauder wins a Ukraine award, or wins a Ukraine contract award for lithium projects in Ukraine. Who saw that one coming? Ukraine on Thursday awarded a bid to mine a major state-owned lithium deposit to investors that include a billionaire friend of President Trump and Putin. As his administration has indicated, it is looking for investment opportunities in the war-torn country. The decision was made by the Ukrainian Government Commission, according to two commission members who spoke on condition of being anonymous because of the sensitive nature of the vote. While it still requires formal approval from Ukraine's cabinet of ministers, the officials said that the deal was essentially sealed. The winning consortium is closely connected to the Trump administration and includes Ronald S. Lauder, cosmetics heir, who has known Mr. Trump since college and planted the idea of buying Greenland. The other investor is TechMet, an energy firm partly owned by the United States government investment agency created during Trump's first term. Wow, imagine that. Anybody saw that coming? I think we did, because we were paying attention to the history of these fellows. And look at what's going on. Keep an eye on Ukraine. You never know what's going to happen over there. All of a sudden, maybe Zelensky goes missing, gets taken out, Russia controls. You just never know. Now we have this. U.S. naval ships relocated north of Cuba following Maduro capture. Who could have saw that one coming? Sheesh. Says in a remarkable military maneuver, the United States has redeployed part of its naval power just miles from Cuba after capturing former Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. The move signifies a shift in regional dynamics, heightening pressure on the area. The amphibious ships USS Iwo Jima and USS San Antonio, instrumental in the operation that led to Maduro's capture, have been repositioned to the Atlantic off Cuba's northern coast. While the majority of the U.S. military forces in the Caribbean have started to withdraw, this strategic placement indicates a new phase, less visible but equally impactful. The Washington Post recently reported that these vessels remain under command of U.S. Southern Command and can be relocated at circumstances demand. Again, this is something that should not surprise us. We should not be caught off guard by this. We have been following this. We know that this is something confirmed back in 2020 by the Russian politician who was confronting Fiona's Hill about the land swap deal between Trump and Putin. That Russian politician said that after Trump takes Venezuela, he's going to say, there's Cuba. And hours following the Venezuela thing, what did Trump say? Cuba's next. And now we got ships moving off the coast of Cuba. Cuba's going to be easy. That's going to be an easy one. Yeah, Cubans will fight back against the United States on that one, but that's going to be a much easier thing than Venezuela, and we know how easy Venezuela was. As analysts interpret the decision to position them near Cuba as a subtle message to the Cuban government, closely linked to the Chavismo movement and deemed a hostile geopolitical actor by Washington. Just keeps on moving, just like this. Trump says U.S. to launch land strikes against Mexico drug cartels. They're still using the drug cartel bit, even though if you guys weren't paying attention, the United States government dropped all drug charges against Maduro. Has nothing to do with drugs now. Almost like it never had anything to do with drugs. As Trump says, U.S. to launch land strikes against Mexico drug cartels. Announcement follows a series of maritime attacks in the Eastern Pacific and Caribbean. Look at those people. Those are the people that are moving things around this world. They're the ones that can tell you what to do in your life. That's pathetic. Give me Jesus. United States President Donald Trump signaled a major potential escalation in the U.S. anti-drug operations by announcing that the U.S. will begin conducting land strikes against drug cartels, particularly in Mexico, following a series of maritime attacks in the Eastern Pacific Ocean and Caribbean Sea. Speaking in an interview with Fox News with broadcaster Sean Hannity, Trump said, "We've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by water." That's right. He's probably not wrong, because the CIA uses planes now. They don't use boats. So that's where all the drugs are coming in. It's through planes, the CIA. And we are going to start now hitting land with regards to the cartels. He also asserted bluntly that the cartels are running Mexico. I don't disagree with him on that one, but provided no further operational details on the planned strikes. However, Trump's suggestion of striking cartels on Mexican soil would represent a significant escalation, you don't say, raising questions about sovereignty and international law. We'll get to that in just a second, because international law does not apply to Trump. That's what he said so. It says Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has reportedly rejected foreign military intervention, affirming that it's not going to happen. We'll see. And emphasizing Mexico's right to operate within its own territory. Yeah. With that, we got this. It says Mexico's Sheinbaum urges, that was one day. The next day, Mexico's Sheinbaum urges closer U.S. coordination when Trump threatens land attacks on cartels. Interesting. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum said on Friday that she has tasked her foreign minister with strengthening coordination with the United States after Trump threatened land strikes on drug cartels, which he said were running Mexico. Yesterday, I asked Foreign Minister Juan Ramon de la Fuente to make direct contact with the United States Secretary of State and, if necessary, speak with the President Trump to strengthen coordination, Sheinbaum said during her morning press conference. Trump remarks to Fox News on Thursday marked the latest in a series of escalating threats to deploy U.S. military force against drug cartels within Mexican territory, a move Mexico considers a red line. Trump's threats gained new force after the United States forces attacked Venezuela last weekend and captured its president, Maduro. So Sheinbaum has repeatedly warned that any unilateral military action by the U.S. and Mexico would constitute a grave violation of the nation's sovereignty. They don't give a rip. At the same time, she has doubled down on bilateral security cooperation with the United States to avoid Mexico bringing in Trump's crosshairs. Yeah, because that's going to do a lot of good. Because we know that Trump stands by his word, don't we? Anyways. And then, of course, we have Joe Lonsdale. If you guys don't know Joe Lonsdale, he's one of the 5 guys next to Peter Thiel and Alex Karp who founded Palantir, which we know was created by the CIA. And Joe Lonsdale likes to speak up on some of this stuff. And he came out and said, Mexico, you're on notice. Narco-terrorists in our backyard will not be tolerated, and neither will the weak politicians that condemn the United States while subtly allying with the cartels. Get in line with the president or else. Important piece of whatever. Doesn't matter. So Joe Lonsdale he knows stuff. He's plugged in. He's part of the techno bros. He's in there with the Alex Karps and the Peter Thiels and stuff. He knows what's up. And he's telling Mexico, you're up next. We should probably pay attention to that. Moving over to Greenland. How are we doing on time? Whew, we got to keep going, guys. It says Danish politicians propose inviting German and French troops to Greenland as U.S. deterrent. That ain't going to deter nothing. Anyways, it's still showing that there's movement happening. So several Danish politicians have floated the idea of deploying European troops, specifically Germany and France, to Greenland to raise the potential cost of any United States military action amid escalating rhetoric from Trump over control of the Arctic land. The proposals, though not official government policy, reflect growing anxiety in Denmark and Europe over Trump's renewed threats to acquire Greenland, including hints at military operations. Conservative MP Rasmus Jarlov, chair of Denmark's Defense Committee, suggested in a TV2 interview that welcoming troops from allies like France and Germany would be wise so that the price of military invasion for the Americans would be extremely high. So basically, military troops. We're going to send you to Denmark. We know you're going to die. We know you're going to get slaughtered, but it's all in the name of raising the prices up for the United States military. Hope you're okay with that. That's basically what they're saying. So if this is the move, the United States will get Greenland, if it's the move. So we'll see what happens there. It says Danish troops told to shoot first, ask questions later if U.S. invades Greenland. European nations' rule of engagement requires soldiers to immediately counterattack invading forces without awaiting orders. It says the European nations' rules of engagement requires soldiers to immediately counterattack invading forces without awaiting orders. On Wednesday, Denmark's defense ministry confirmed the existence of the 1952 rule and added that it remains in force. It comes after United States President Donald Trump raised the prospects of invading the NATO territory of Greenland, admitting that the U.S. troops to do so was an option. The 1952 rule states that in an event of an invasion, the attack forces must immediately take up a fight without waiting or seeking orders, even if the commanders in question are not aware of the declaration of war or state of war. When approached for a comment by the Danish newspaper, the defense minister said the order on precautionary measures for military defense in the event of attacks on a country and during war remains in force. So shoot first, ask questions later. That's the policy of my house, too. Just saying. Then we got this that just came out. It says, we don't want to be Americans. Greenland's parties respond to new Trump threat. In response to U.S. President Donald Trump's latest threat to seize control of Greenland, the leaders of Danish autonomous regions, 5 main political parties, issued a joint statement late Friday declaring the future of the island should be decided by Greenlanders. The leaders of the 5 Greenland political parties in parliament issued a joint statement late Friday. That's one way of getting political parties to work together. After Donald Trump again suggested the use of force to seize the Danish autonomous territory, declaring the future of the island should be decided by Greenlanders. We don't want to be Americans. We don't want to be Danish. We just want to be Greenlanders. The leaders of the 5 parties in parliament said in a joint statement, the future of Greenland must be decided by Greenlanders. They added, the statement came out hours after Trump once again asserted that the United States needs to own Greenland. We are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because listen to this. We are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not. I want you to think of it this way. That's like seeing your neighbor come out of their house and scream towards your house and says, I'm going to do something about you and your property, whether you like it or not. And then they just barge over into your territory, declare it to be theirs, hog tie you with duct tape, and throw you in the basement. That's what is happening here. That's what's happening. I hope people realize that. It's really not that complicated to understand. That's what he's doing. He's just like, I want your land, so I'm going to come and take it. That's what's going on. It says, because if we don't do it, and here's the narrative, Russia or China will take over Greenland. There it is. And we're not going to have Russia and China as our neighbor, Trump told reporters at the White House meeting with oil executives. Just keeps on going. Now we have this. This is adding to the prospect of destabilizing Europe and diminishing the European Union and removing NATO. I mean, this is where things start getting interesting. And after we go through this, I want to give you guys something to think about. Just some food for thought. That's all it is. And I think it's pretty interesting. It says EU Parliament eyes freezing U.S. trade deal over Trump's Greenland threats. Says senior EU lawmakers said or want the European Parliament to freeze the EU-US trade deal in response to Donald Trump's threats to take over Greenland. The deal was deeply unpopular across party lines. It was seen as an overwhelmingly favoring Washington, but European Commissioner President Ursula von der Leyen sold it as a price of keeping Trump on side. Well, we know that that's not happening anymore. Again, confirmed by not only Trump's own words, but Project 2025 and the national security policy that just came out that Europe's now the enemy. So it doesn't matter at this point. It says, however, Trump ratcheted up his rhetoric this week, saying that we need Greenland from the standpoint of national security and has repeatedly refused to rule out military intervention. As a result, the MEPs from the center-left, liberal, green, and left-wing groups say that the deal should be blocked. Cannot imagine that in the current situation, MEPs would vote for any trade measures benefiting the United States. The Greens' top trade lawmaker and chair of the Internal Market Committee, Anna Cavazzini, told Politico. It says the biggest political group in the parliament, the European People's Party, the EPP, remains non-committal. The EPP's top trade MEP, Jørgen Waterborn, left the door to blocking the trade deal ajar, while the EU must preserve the deal as a basis for stable transatlantic trade. He said, "We are ready to act if necessary," but the EPP lacks the number to pass the deal with right-wing and far-right allies alone. A united front by the Socialists, Renew, and the Greens would be enough to put this agreement on ice. Parliament's U.S. deal negotiators will meet on Wednesday. So pay attention Wednesday to this trade deal, and we'll see if there's any updates on that. Now, I want to give you guys something to think about. This pertains to possibly future prophetic events and things that we may start seeing happening now, for the times that we're here. And I've brought up this idea before, but I just want to kind of expound upon it a little bit. So I'm one of those people that when I saw this and I started to see the direction that the United States was growing against the EU, going against NATO, going against Europe and all these things, not only standing against them, but viewing them as an enemy and that they need to be taken down and all these types of stuff, that's the position that the United States is in now, confirmed in many different ways, both in speech and in policy. And we know for the future coming revived Roman Empire, Rome 2, whatever you want to call it, that's coming, what's standing there now needs to go away. And we're seeing that it is indeed crumbling. It's collapsing economically. The military is weak. The leadership is weak. There's no direction. People are just doing whatever they want to do. It's falling apart. Europe is falling apart. You cannot deny that. And it needs to be torn down for this next Roman Empire to come in. But something that I don't think that we necessarily think about is because our minds, when it comes to eschatology and when it comes to prophetic events, have been trained one way. And a lot of it stems from the concept of that, 7-year tribulation that you cannot find in scripture, but I digress. A lot of it comes from that idea of thinking, because what comes along with that is a predetermined notion on many different eschatological events that we don't necessarily think about. I'm going to give you my perspective on this that is one of those outside the box. I don't follow the narrative ideas when it comes to that. Who says, and I mean in scripture, who says in scripture that the revived Roman Empire must be rebuilt in the western leg of the Roman Empire? Why does it have to be in Europe? We just naturally think it has to be in Europe because, well, that's where Europe's at. That's where the European Union's at. That's where the Vatican's at. That's where all these things are at. And it's like, why does it have to be there? If you guys want to go back in history, biblical times, the main elements of the Roman Empire, yeah, you had Rome and stuff over there in the West, Greece and things like that. But the main elements of it was in the eastern leg of it. So why do we have to believe that Rome 2.0 has to be built in Europe? If we're going back old school and we're taking things back old school, we're going back to Babylon, we're going back to the Assyrian bloodline from the Antichrist, because we know that's what scripture says, and we start going in that direction, why would Rome 2.0 not also be the same thing, which would be much closer to Babylon, which would be much closer to Israel, which would be much closer to the conflict of the Middle East that everything is going to be revolving around in future prophetic events? So who says that the Antichrist is going to come out and rebuild Rome 2.0 in Europe? The Bible doesn't say that. Who says that? We do. The people do. The people that claim to be experts. They just stick it there because that's where it's at now. Not where Rome, you know what I mean. But that's where all the emphasis is at now. Everybody forgets about that eastern leg. And part of the eastern leg was Assyria. And we know that that's where the Antichrist is going to be coming out of. He's the Assyrian. So why would he not build it over there where the emphasis would be put on places with that? Just food for thought. So if we're witnessing the teardown of Europe, the collapse of the European Union and the elimination of NATO, and I think the United Nations is going defunct, I don't think that's going to play much part for very much longer. Why would the Antichrist, who's going to be of the Assyrian bloodline, not build it in the eastern side? It's still Rome. It's still the Roman Empire. It's just the forgotten about eastern side of things. And I think that makes more sense. But if Fiona Fat saying Rome 2.0 will be built in the United States. That's not the eastern leg of the Roman Empire. That's the Middle East. United States is not a part of the Roman Empire. So, no. No, there's the western leg, which is the Europe side, and then there's the eastern leg, which is that Middle Eastern area over there. If you go and look at the old Roman Empire on a map, it'll point it out to you. So, yeah, just something to think about. Hinge on that one, gnaw on that one, some food for thought. That's all. That's all it is. All right, so we also got this. It says Trump administration mulls payment to sway Greenlanders to join the United States. That's right. Trump is now thinking about taking your money and paying Greenlanders to become American. Interesting. It says U.S. officials have discussed sending lump sum payments to Greenlanders as part of a bid to convince them to secede from Denmark and potentially join the United States, according to 4 sources familiar with the matter. While the exact dollar figure and logistics of any payment are unclear, the U.S. officials, including White House aides, have discussed figures ranging from $10,000 to $100,000 per person. Said 2 of the sources who requested to be anonymous to discuss internal deliberations. The idea of directly paying residents of Greenland and overseas territory of Denmark offers one explanation of how the United States might attempt to buy the island of 57,000 people, despite authorities' insistence in Copenhagen and Nuuk that Greenland is not for sale. The tactic is among various plans being discussed by the United States or by the White House requiring Greenland, including potential use of the U.S. military, but it risks coming off as overly transactional and even degrading to a population that has long been debated its own independence and its economic dependence on Denmark. This is a group of people who they're prideful. They don't even want to be considered Danish. They just want to be Greenland. They want to be their own country. They want independence. And you're going to sit there and going to say, hey, I know you guys want to be independent. How about I pay you to eliminate your independence and fall under us? How about that? Yeah, that's going to go over real well. I don't know who came up with that idea, but they need to be fired. Then we have this. This is fascinating. I didn't know about this. It says Trump really wants Greenland. Emboldened by the Venezuelan operation, Trump is seeking a foreign balm for domestic pain. Now it says, through a teetotaler, Donald Trump has an alcoholic's personality, according to Susie Wiles, chief of staff. Addictive personalities tend to be compulsive risk takers, doing what makes you feel good to suspend the pain, whatever that may be. But if we jump down, it says, but why Greenland? First, because it could be easy, much like Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela. Trump could annex Greenland from the performative comfort of the Situation Room he created a lookalike in Mar-a-Lago. It would take an hour or two and no risk of U.S. casualties. But what adds on to the idea of wanting Greenland? Well, second, adding Greenland to his column would be lucrative. Trump's libertarian friends have been eyeing it for some time. Peter Thiel, who wants to set up crypto-empowered network states on undeveloped territory, has invested in Praxis, a startup that aims to do just that and which has scouted Greenland. So Peter Thiel wants Greenland for his crypto network state collection. It says Trump's ambassador to Denmark, Ken Howery, was a co-founder with Thiel and Elon Musk of PayPal, which we know Elon Musk actually wasn't one of the founders of PayPal. If you want to look into the backstory of that, he's somebody that came in, joined after it was created by those guys, kicked a couple people out, took power, and claimed that he was. Interesting. So Elon Musk didn't even create PayPal, but yeah. Just goes to show the type of mind that Musk actually is. But it says Silicon Valley is awash with billionaires invested in one kind of networked venture or another. Greenland is high on most lists. Unlike Mars, copying Greenland is doable. On top of pleasing the libertarians, taking Greenland would go well with MAGA ideologues since it would kill NATO in one swoop. We talked about that. It says Denmark could invoke Article 5, in which an attack on one is an attack on all, but since America leads NATO, the treaty would be void. No ally would come to Denmark's defense, probably not. Were Denmark to accept the fate accompli, the results would be the same. Either way, geography, not law, would do Trump's explaining. Though a slice of Greenland sits in the eastern hemisphere, most of it lies within the western. So now we got Peter Thiel that's involved with all this as well. Interesting. And so we get to this. It says Trump lays out a vision of power restrained only by my own morality. On topic after topic, Trump made clear that he would be the arbiter of any limits to his own authorities, not international law or treaties. The only power that constrains Trump is his own morality, and we know that his moral compass is so jacked up that he couldn't find his way to a parking lot when he's in Walmart. That should tell you something. It says President Trump declared, he's calling himself a king. I hope people realize that. President Trump declared on Wednesday evening that his power as commander-in-chief is constrained only by his own morality, brushing aside international law and other checks on his ability to use military might to strike, invade, or coerce nations around the world. Asked in a wide-ranging interview, the New York Times, if there was any limits on his global powers, Trump said, yeah, there is one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop me. We know that Trump is a puppet, but we've seen that he has the ability to start going off the cuff. He starts cutting strings and going in directions that they don't want to. And if he goes too far in that direction, they're not going to let another Hitler situation happen. They're going to remove this guy and put something else in. I can guarantee it. They're not gonna mess this up. They're going to do it. Says, I don't need international law, he said. I'm not looking to hurt people. Right. How about those 100 people that you just bombed in boats off of Venezuela that just in order to do your own campaign over there? How about that? Not looking to hurt people. When pressed further about whether his administration needed to abide by international law, Mr. Trump said, I do. But he made clear that he would be the arbiter when such constraints applied to the United States. It depends what your definition of international law is. Well, since he runs his administration just making up definitions and policies whenever he wants to, that makes sense. This is Mr. Trump's assessment of his own freedom to use any instrument of military, economic, or political power to cement American supremacy was the most blunt acknowledgement yet of this worldview. This should be telling. This should be telling, guys. And so with that, we're going to be taking a look at this Somalia daycare situation. I haven't talked about it yet. I was gathering some information and things just kind of worked themselves out. They often manage to do that. They just work themselves out. Because I think what's going on with that, they took an already created crisis that's been there for over a decade. I'll show you that. And they decided to place a spotlight on it in order to make Minnesota a pressure cooker. We have not seen anything like Minnesota regarding this whole ICE situation yet. And things are getting very, very bad. And so I'm going to show you how all this goes into play. It's fascinating because, again, all the pastors and the prophecy teachers have been pointing out this dude's quote-unquote investigation and showing that what Trump is doing is correct, when I've got information here that says it's all planned. It says YouTubers viral Somali daycare video spurs sweeping federal fraud probe in Minnesota as Walz defends oversight of $18 billion. So I'm sure you guys have heard about this and you're aware of this, so this probably isn't anything new, but we need to start off. It says a viral video alleging fraud at several Minnesota daycare centers has triggered intensified federal and state scrutiny of how public money is spent. It says the clash between online allegations and official audits has put Governor Tim Walz's administration and the state's oversight systems under a national spotlight. It comes against the backdrop of a federal prosecutor's allegation earlier in December that half or more of approximately $18 billion in federal funds allocated to Minnesota since 2018 have been stolen. Authorities stress that daycare sites in conservative YouTuber Nick Shirley's footage are now part of an expanded investigative map. Still, they have not publicly alleged a specific dollar amount of confirmed fraud tied to those particular centers. Shirley posted a roughly 40-minute video late last week documenting visits to nearly a dozen daycare centers in Minnesota that appear largely empty or inactive, despite, as Shirley claims, receiving public funds. In the video, shared on YouTube and X, has amassed nearly 2 million direct views in 3 days, as well as tens of millions of impressions across platforms that is rapidly circulated under hashtags referencing daycare fraud and Somali centers. If you guys don't know, there is a situation going on where a whole bunch of daycare centers, registered daycare centers who collect government money in Minnesota, what's going on is some of them don't have kids in them, and it's a way to just steal money from the government, and then they can send it overseas to their families and so on and so forth like that. It's something that's been going on for a long time. This is not new, so nobody's denying that that's happening. I'm not denying that it's not happening. It is happening, but it's been going on for a long time. We just happen to have somebody that just magically comes along, this little kid here, who can get it out into the spotlight, and then all of a sudden, the U.S. government reacts the way that they do. So let's go through this real quick. Through the years, a decade of investigating fraud in Minnesota. Since 2013, Fox 9 has been detailing and breaking stories of fraud in Minnesota where millions of dollars were stolen from the government programs. You can find the videos, the investigation videos from Fox 9 going all the way back to 2013. This is legit. They have been investigating it. They have been sharing their investigations with the government, and there has been ongoing since 2013 charging, prosecuting, and deportations of the investigations that they found. I kid you not. So this is not new. This is not new. It says in 2015, the Fox 9 investigators uncovered daycare fraud, which led to charges and guilty pleas. 2018, the Fox 9 investigators spent more than 5 months looking into significant fraud in massive state-run programs. It has been going on. It says, while fraud in Minnesota has been gaining national attention recently, the investigations into these schemes by Fox 9 and others have been going on for more than a decade, dating back to 2013. There have been numerous Fox 9 investigations into daycare fraud, Medicaid fraud, and other avenues of state fraud. So this has been a problem for a very long time. Is there a problem? There is. Does it need to be taken care of? It does. Is this the way it needs to be taken care of? I don't think so. But out of all the things that I've seen, we got the right-wing podcasters and stuff. We got the pastors and the prophecy teachers. They're praising this Nick Shirley guy. They're saying he's the one that's out there because the leftist government and they don't want to, in the media, they don't want to do it. They didn't investigate anything, which we know is a lie because we're seeing it right here. And so it took some kid to come out on YouTube to go and do this thing. Well, the problem is I don't think that this is just some kid. Let's take a look. What you need to know about Latter-day Saint Nick Shirley and his fraud investigations. So who is this kid that managed to do this? Well, in 2019, Latter-day Saint, so he's a Mormon. Saint Nick Shirley was a young amateur YouTube creator best known for prank videos and risky stunts. Like one of his videos was he ran away from home at the age of 16, bought a plane ticket, and ended up halfway across the United States, and he filmed it. That's the type of stuff that he used to do. Says his early antics even landed him a brief appearance on Netflix's The Mind Explained, where he joined other viral teens to talk about the teenage brain. When sharing about his experience on social media, Shirley said, "I was selected to be a part of a major Netflix film, sharing the screens with such people like Greta Thunberg." Wow. Imagine that. It says not long after Shirley stepped away from the YouTube altogether to serve a full-time mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Santiago, Chile. I don't know if that's legit or not. Maybe he went somewhere else under the guise of that. I can't confirm it. It says Shirley returned to his channel after his mission and began to focus interviewing people on the street, especially during political events and protests. So all of a sudden he goes from prank videos and running away from home at the age of 16 to I'm going to go do this mission work as a Latter-day Saint, and then he comes back and he's immediately doing a YouTube channel about political events and protests. So Shirley's channel grew exponentially as he leaned into political content, going from 100,000 subscribers in May of 2024 to 1.3 million subscribers at the end of 2025. We're starting to get a tinge of something stinky here. However, it is his latest video. I investigated Minnesota's billion-dollar fraud scandal that has earned him national headlines and attention from the White House. Well, what else has he been up to? Well, pro-Trump influencers fire up fears as migrant invasion ahead of the United States election. This is June 13th, 2024. It says one late afternoon in mid-May, a half dozen Hispanic day laborers were paid $20 each to parade in front of the White House on camera, holding signs with slogans like "I love Biden" and "I need a work permit for my family." The stunt was orchestrated by Nick Shirley. I don't know if you guys can see that. You guys see that? Stunt was orchestrated by Nick Shirley. He paid illegals to go out in front of the White House with signs that says "I love Biden" and "I need a work permit for my family," so he can film it. Nick Shirley, a pro-Trump online influencer, often asks migrants on camera if they support Democratic President Joe Biden or think he made it easier for them to come to the United States. We want to take you to the White House, Shirley told the men he recruited at Home Depot parking lot, where day laborers typically wait for jobs, in a video later posted to YouTube. What Biden did for migrants is very kind, right? Letting everyone come in, so we are going to show him and say thank you. Shirley, a 22-year-old with more than 318,000 followers on social media, is among a new class of influencers supportive of Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump, who are helping shape the immigration debate as the U.S. election campaign heats up. So this kid just manages to come back, and he picked up some immigrants from Home Depot parking lot, paid him $20 to pull a stunt on that type of thing. Doesn't really add to his credibility. Here's the picture, by the way. It's a video. He still has it on his YouTube channel. You can go watch it. But yeah, he paid these guys to stand out there with their signs. That's him. How about this? Who are the right-wing influencers filling Trump's head with visions of Antifa? Meet the content creators whose videos from Portland and Chicago shaped the president's distorted view of reality. This is October 2025. Last week, the White House roundtable on Antifa was an odd affair, mainly because the supposed experts who briefed Donald Trump on anti-fascism were right-wing influencers who make a living filming themselves confronting left-wing protesters. Although the influencers all describe themselves as independent journalists, like Nick Shirley, they all frame left-wing protesters as nefarious or ridiculous in their videos, and 8 of the 11 are current or former employees of Turning Point USA, the conservative advocacy organization founded by the late Charlie Kirk. Their job, the extremism researcher Jared Holt said on his podcast, is to make these viral clips that they can show on Fox News and scare your grandpa into thinking Antifa is on the verge of a mass slaughter, and that Mr. Trump is the only man who can put an end to this by sending the military to go crack some skulls. Yeah, that's legit, because we are in a propaganda info war. The left does their version of it, the right does their version of it. That's how it goes. We can't deny that. Some of these people include Andy Ngo, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Katie Daviscourt, Nick Sorter, Julio Rojas, Savannah Hernandez, Cam Higbee, and Nick Shirley was in attendance at the Antifa thing. Nick Shirley, 23, started out making prank videos during high school years in Utah, but last year he began to make YouTube videos aimed at boosting Donald Trump. February 2024, goes on to talk about the Home Depot parking lot stunt. And here's a picture from it. There's Carolyn Levitt. There's Stephen Miller right here on the left. That is Nick Shirley at the White House talking about the Antifa stuff. He's part of that group. How about this? Nick Shirley just won the James O'Keefe Citizen Journalist of the Year Award. James O'Keefe from Project Veritas, we've confirmed in his background that he was trained by Blackwater, Eric Prince's group, to go in and be a propagandist type of thing. Well, Nick Shirley just won the James O'Keefe Journalist Award on that. How about this? David Hawk, identified only by his first name in Nick Shirley's videos, got info for his anti-Somali campaign from a GOP state house staffer. But I thought this was just an independent journalist kid that just went out and did this on his own because nobody else could do it. In his video alleging fraud at Somali-owned daycare centers in Minneapolis, right-wing YouTuber Nick Shirley has led around the city by a purported whistleblower only called David. Shirley and his outlets like Fox News have traditionally picked up the influencer's video, credited David by first name only. While Shirley's video portrays the man as a party interested in purported fraud because he observed daycare centers near his office in downtown Minneapolis, David, it turns out, is actually a political operative with connections to the Minnesota State House. Shirley's main source is a lobbyist and one-time right-wing candidate for Minnesota Attorney General, whose full name is David Hawk. Accounts bearing his name have a long online history posting about the Somali community in Minnesota. He says every Somali in Minnesota is engaged in fraud, all of them. So he's just doing broad spectrum at that point. Don't ever do broad spectrum. Do the research. According to the video, Hawk received information for his campaign against Somali daycare centers from the Minnesota State House. Emails shown in the video reveal he got state funding figures for specific centers from a Republican staffer named Joe Marble. Marble works as a committee administrator for the Minnesota House of Republicans, as well as a research consultant for the House GOP caucus, according to the LinkedIn profile. Marble and Hawk ran 2 lobbying groups together years ago, including one involving the gambling industry. They were also high school classmates, and Minnesota Republicans were quick to hitch their wagons to the expose. State Representative Lisa Dumuth said during a virtual news conference Monday that our caucus has been working to expose fraud for years, including working with Nick Shirley. So this dude goes from independent, random YouTube kid who discovers all this stuff to being connected to pulling public stunts, being involved with Trump's White House, and working with the Republicans in order to do this video to expose something that's already been going on for decades that has been in the works in order to bring in Trump's ICE group. So interesting how this whole narrative has shifted. If, I don't know, the pastors and the secular podcasters and the prophecy teachers and stuff actually did a lick of research, they would find that it's not just some kid. But they don't want to know that because they have an agenda and a narrative that they have to push in order to get the clicks. They don't want the truth. The truth scares them. For his part, in a post on Twitter on Wednesday, Shirley denied working with Demuth, or even knowing who she was. However, Hawk speaks openly about his links to the Minnesota State House in the video. It says the email address for David Hawk listed on the documents in the video also leads to multiple accounts around the web link to the lobbyist. And basically what's going on with this is they follow his email around. They find his Instagram account, they find his TikTok account, and so on and so forth. But then as soon as the Intercept started making inquiries for the article, Hawk's Instagram account was deleted and the name of his TikTok account was changed and the email listed was removed. Hawk ran for Minnesota Attorney General in 2010 as the Resource Party candidate. Then, on top of that, in February 22nd, 2025, Nick Shirley, an independent random kid journalist in the United States, happens to make his way all the way to Tel Aviv in order to interview Daniel Rubenstein. This is straight from Daniel Rubenstein's own Substack. But that's not all, because if we look at some of the other things that Nick Shirley hasn't been involved with since 2024, a very short period of time. First of all, he was at the White House Christmas party this past year, but he covered the anti-Trump. These are all physical locations that he went to. Anti-Trump protests, November 2025. Antifa Occupy Portland, which is in Oregon, October to November 2025. He was at the Chicago ICE standoffs in Chicago in October 2025. Dearborn Anti-Islam Display in Michigan, November 2025. He covers the Mexico border campaign, so he's on all different parts of the border in Arizona and Texas. He's still doing that. He was the first American to ever film within El Salvador's Sikot prison. And he was interviewed by Fox News for that. How on earth does this little kid independent journalist, become the first American to ever film within there. He also covered the Ukraine war in Kiev in 2024. He was in Israel for the Israel-Gaza war, and he was trying to get into Gaza but was denied entry, and that was in 2025. He was at the Paris immigrant crisis in France in 2025, the United Kingdom riots in the United Kingdom in 2025. He was at the Texas anti-Islam protest in Texas in December of 2025, and various ICE protests all around the United States in June of 2025. Who's paying for all of this? Who's paying for it? You're not going to tell me some kid journalist coming back from a 2-year mission, Latter-day Saints mission, and starting a political YouTube channel is going to have enough money right off the bat to be able to go and do all that. He's planted. Why? To spark what we're seeing in Minnesota right now. What comes along with that? Vance announces new prosecutorial post to investigate fraud nationwide. The new post of Assistant Attorney General with nationwide jurisdiction will be supervised out of the White House and will only take authority from Trump and Vance. So they're building a new position where the only people above them is Trump and Vance themselves, who has free nationwide jurisdiction to go and audit anybody they want to for fraud. You're going to tell me that this wasn't planned out? Vice President J.D. Vance announced that the Trump administration is creating a new Assistant Attorney General post to prosecute fraud nationwide and is to be supervised by the White House. The post is being created in response to a massive fraud investigation in Minnesota. Problem, reaction, solution. Over the loss of billions of dollars that has led to nearly 100 indictments and the issuance of 1,500 subpoenas, Vance said that the investigation will be expanded to Ohio, California, and elsewhere. That leads us to this, what we know about the fatal ICE shooting in Minneapolis. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer shot and killed a 37-year-old woman Wednesday morning during an operation in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and President Trump described the shooting as self-defense, but the mayor and governor disputed that, citing videos from the scene. You guys can go watch the video yourself. We're not here to determine if it was one way or the other. We're here to talk about the aftermath of what it is, because that's the important part. Obviously, the loss of a life is important, but you guys know what I'm saying. It says the shooting comes as the Trump administration has deployed about 2,000 federal immigration and investigative agents in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area as part of a crackdown on the state's fraud scandal and immigration. So that video that was clearly built and deployed on purpose by the Trump administration brought in 2,000 federal investigative agents, ICE agents. And then we had the shooting happen, which is causing all of the riots and protests and everything that we're seeing over there. And now we're seeing that there's going to be possibly another 1,000 going in there as well. This has created a giant pressure cooker in Minneapolis, and it was on purpose. This isn't an accident. This isn't one of those things where we just stumbled into something. This is on purpose. We keep going. We have Vance, who asserts that the ICE officer who killed Renee Good, that one lady in Minnesota, is immune from state charges. Legal experts dispute his absolute immunity claim, pointing to the more limited supremacy clause immunity. Tensions are rising as federal and Minnesota state officials clash over the investigation and conflicting accounts of the shooting. Vance is claiming that the federal officer has absolute immunity and the state can't do anything about it. Well, the problem is that's not entirely true, because there's no absolute immunity in this case. You would have a limited supremacy clause immunity, which has to be determined in a court. So J.D. Vance is basically trying to scare people, saying that the ICE agents can do whatever they want without any blowback from the states, which is entirely false. Then, on top of that, they're hiding something. State investigators say that they can't access ICE shooting evidence after FBI takes the case. The head of Minnesota State Investigation Agency said that the U.S. Attorney's Office has barred it from taking part in the investigation into an Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer's fatal shooting of a Minneapolis woman. When this stuff happens, and it involves a federal officer, there's two investigations that take place. There's one from the federal side, there's one from the state side. The problem is the federal government is now blocking a sovereign state from having access to a criminal investigation in their own state. They can't access any of the information. They've hid it all. What are they hiding? This is Minnesota Investigations Agency said Thursday that the U.S. Attorney's Office has prevented it from taking part in the investigation into an Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer's fatal shooting of Minneapolis woman Renee Good. The investigation would now be led solely by the FBI, and the BCA would no longer have access to the case materials, scene evidence, or investigative interviews necessary to complete a thorough and independent investigation, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent Drew Evans said in a statement. It has been decided that the BCA would investigate Good's shooting death along with the FBI, but the U.S. Attorney's Office changed that, according to Evans. This is coming straight down from Trump's Attorney General, saying, nope, it's purely federal. The announcement came as protesters and law enforcement clashed Thursday morning outside of Minneapolis Immigration Court, with governor urging restraint and schools canceling classes as a precaution. Asked about the development, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said Thursday that Minnesota authorities don't have any jurisdiction in this investigation, which is a load of crap. This is the chief prosecutor for the county that includes Minneapolis said she's not giving up, even though the Trump administration has frozen the state out of the investigation into an Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer's fatal shooting of Minneapolis woman. My point in all this, again, because some people are because they're stuck to the narrative. They're saying, well, you're defending. I'm not even talking about that. I haven't even mentioned anything regarding that. What I'm talking about is we have a situation where this was clearly orchestrated and built up in order to bring these people in. Then we had something happen, which is only expanding it even further. Now we have full lockdown of information by the federal government, with the vice president saying that there's absolute immunity, which is not true at all. And nobody's seeing a problem with this. This is how authoritarianism works. This is exactly how it works. They're going with all action, shoot first, ask questions later. Then the government is falsely giving them full-on immunity to do whatever they want to do. And then they're blocking sovereign states from having any access about the situation so they can investigate on their own. This is a problem. And then it says 2,000 federal agencies deploying in Minneapolis immigration crackdown. Trump administration has begun a massive deployment of hundreds of Department of Homeland Security agents to the Twin Cities area as it escalates the federal crackdown. The crackdown would involve roughly 2,000 agents, possibly another 1,000 coming in, and officers from Immigration and Customs Enforcement Deportation Branch and Homeland Security Investigations, the agency's investigative arm tasked with fighting transnational crimes. The plan is for the agents and officers to oversee a 30-day surge in operations in the Twin City area, which looks like it's going to get extended now, making the region the first major target of the Trump administration's expanded immigration crackdown in the new year, officials said. Agents deployed from Homeland Security Investigations are expected to probe alleged cases of fraud, building on last month's inspection of the dozens of sites in Minneapolis area. So there's our starting point. That was where the match was lit. It says officials said the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commander Gregory Bovino. We've talked about that dude before. He's the dude who did the photo shoot dressed like a Nazi. He's the one that says if you are gripping the steering wheel too tight or you look nervous, we're going to pull you over and start asking you questions and stuff. The dude is a Nazi, who has overseen the controversial immigration roundup in Los Angeles, Chicago, Charlotte, and New Orleans, is expected to arrive in Minnesota to help with the investigation. The deployment, which began Sunday, represents one of the largest concentrations of DHS personnel in an American city in recent years. The move greatly expands the federal law enforcement footprint in Minnesota at a time of heightened political and community tension there. Now, this is where I want to show you something. It says, according to senior law enforcement officials, the surge includes several hundred additional agents from Homeland Security Investigations, as well as hundreds of officers from ICE's enforcement and removal operations. And It includes tactical units known as the Special Response Teams that are slated to be a part of the operation. What are those guys? That's BORTAC. That's the U.S. Border Patrol Tactical Unit. These are the ones that they call in for domestic terrorism. It says the Border Patrol Tactical Unit, or BORTAC, is the premier rapid response force of the United States Border Patrol. The unit was established in 1984 to manage civil disturbances and rapidly evolved into a multifaceted tactical unit. With its headquarters in El Paso, Texas, the operatives stationed across the United States, BORTAC is poised to immediate deployment to emergent and high-risk incidents requiring specialized skill. Goes on to say that they received training worldwide with the military. They train with United States military, European military, and the IDF. And then they take that over here and are deployed as Border Patrol agents sent into the heartland of the United States as an anti-terrorism task force. They were deployed in Minnesota as well. I've got pictures. I don't have them to show you, but I've got pictures with their BORTAC logos, patches on their thing. Why is that important? NSPM 7. The policy that we've talked about declaring American citizens to be terrorists if they're anti-capitalist, anti-American, anti-Christian, all these generic terms, whatever they deem it to be. And then you pair that up with some other policies that go back to the Biden administration, where as long as they're working with local law enforcement, they have the ability to use lethal weapons against United States citizens. On top of that, Minneapolis schools cancel classes after Border Patrol class disrupts dismissal at Roosevelt. Minneapolis schools closed for the week, citing safety concerns after an encounter involving armed Border Patrol agents near Roosevelt High School. There's video of this if you want to check it out. Minneapolis Public Schools on Wednesday canceled classes district-wide for the remainder of the week due to safety concerns following the killing of a woman on Wednesday by an ICE agent. It says the move came after officials at Roosevelt High School said that armed U.S. Border Patrol agents came on school property during dismissal Wednesday and began tackling people, including students, high school students, and handcuffed 2 staff members and released chemical weapons on bystanders. Students. There's video of it. You can go check it out. They entered a high school property and started doing that. Then we've got this. I want to make a point. Border Patrol's use of deadly force criticized in report. This is from 2014. An independent review of U.S. Border Patrol shootings criticizes the agency for lack of diligence in its investigations and suggests that agents' tactics sometimes create a pretext to open fire. Border Patrol agents have deliberately stepped in the path of cars. Border Patrol agents have deliberately, this is back from 2014, independent review. Border Patrol agents have deliberately stepped in the path of cars, apparently to justify shootings at the drivers, and have fired in frustration at people throwing rocks from the Mexican side of the border, according to an independent review of 67 cases that resulted in 19 deaths. Proper training says you don't ever stand in front of a car, even when it's pulled over. But Border Patrol agents are doing that to justify shooting people. The report by law enforcement experts criticized the Border Patrol for lack of diligence. This is, by the way, independent review by actual law enforcement, like ex-law enforcement people, not just some random group. Experts criticized the Border Patrol for lack of diligence in investigating U.S. agents who had fired their weapons. It also said that it was unclear whether the agency consistently and thoroughly reviews use of deadly force incidents. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Protection had commissioned the review, had tried to prevent the scathing 21-page report from coming to light. So they did it, and then they tried to hide it. How did they do that? House and Senate oversight committees requested copies of this review last fall in 2013, but received only a summary that omitted the most controversial findings. That some border agents stood in front of moving vehicles as a pretext to open fire, and that agents should have moved away from rock throwers instead of shooting at them. The Times obtained the full report in the agency's internal response, which runs 23 pages. The response rejects the 2 major recommendations, barring border agents from shooting at vehicles unless its occupants are trying to kill them, and barring agents from shooting people who throw things that can't cause physical injury. This not only applies to just the incident that happened in Minnesota, but several incidents that have already happened that have resulted in multiple people being shot by ICE agents, both illegal and U.S. citizens. We have reported on some of those in the past. Here's another one back from 2014. Los Angeles Times gets its hand on an investigation into Border Patrol practices by the Police Executive Research Forum, a nonprofit research and policy organization in Washington that works closely with law enforcement agencies, that was allowed to examine internal Border Patrol case files in 67 shooting incidents from January 2010 to October 2012. It goes over the same thing that we just talked about. I'll show some of this stuff. U.S. Customs, Border Protection, Use of Force Review, Cases and Policy. This is February 2013, conducted by the Police Executive Research Forum. This is that document. We jump down. Might be hard to see. We get down here. Shooting at vehicles. 15 cases were reviewed where shots were fired at or into vehicles by CBP agents. Based on a review by the submitted cases, it appears that CBP practice allows shooting at the driver of any suspect vehicle that comes into the direction of the agents. It is suspected that in many vehicle shooting cases, the subject driver was attempting to flee from the agents who intentionally put themselves into the exit path of the vehicle, thereby exposing themselves to additional risk and creating justification for the use of deadly force. In most of these cases, the agents have stated that they were shooting at the driver of the vehicle that was coming at them and posing an imminent threat to their life. In some cases, passengers were struck by agents' gunfire. Little focus has been placed in the defensive tactics that could have been used to by shooting agents, such as them getting out of the way. It should be recognized that a half-ounce, 200-grain bullet is unlikely to stop a 4,000-pound moving vehicle, and if the driver of the approaching vehicle is disabled by the bullet, the vehicle will become a totally unguided missile. Obviously, shooting at a moving vehicle can pose a risk to bystanders, including other agents. The cases suggest that some of the shots at suspect vehicles are taken out of frustration when agents who are on foot have no other way of detaining suspects who are fleeing in a vehicle. How about this? Homeland Security Policy Statement, update to Department Policy on the Use of Force, February 6, 2023. This is what ICE agents fall underneath when it comes to department policy and the use of force. Let's just jump down here and let's see what's going on. Warning shots and disabling fire. General prohibition. Except in the limited circumstances described in Section VB exceptions, DHS law enforcement officers are prohibited from discharging firearms solely as a warning signal or warning shot, or to disable moving vehicles, vessels, aircraft, or other conveyances. It's their own policy not to do exactly what we've been seeing ICE agents doing. Then we have this. This was reported 3 days ago. It says ICE officers trained never to approach a vehicle from the front, the DHS official said. ICE officers are trained to never approach a vehicle from the front and instead to approach in a tactical L 90-degree angle to prevent injury or crossfire, a senior Department of Homeland Security official told NBC News. The officers are also instructed not to shoot at a moving vehicle and only to use force if there's an immediate risk of serious injury or death. ICE officers are also instructed that firing at a vehicle will not make it stop moving in the direction of the officer. Again, I'm not telling you which way. I'm just giving you the information. This report just came out. It says a Wall Street Journal visual investigation found that Minneapolis ICE killing is one of 13 incidents where federal immigration agencies have used deadly force against civilians in vehicles since July. The killing in Minneapolis and shooting of 2 people in Oregon. That's right, there's 2 people that got shot in Oregon as well. This week are the latest in a string of incidents involving immigration agents firing at civilian vehicles. The Wall Street Journal has identified 13 incidents. I've seen a few of these videos and have done research on a few of these videos, by the way. I've reported on a couple of them as well. Of agents firing at or into civilian vehicles since July, leaving at least 8 people shot with 2 confirmed dead. According to court records and lawyers, only 1 civilian was armed with a concealed weapon that was never drawn, and at least 5 of those shots were U.S. citizens. Several federal officers reported injuries, including bruised ribs, a dislocated finger, and a bite wound. The bite wound, that's the one that's crazy. The Journal reviewed public records, court documents, agency press releases, and gun violence databases of vehicle shootings involving immigration agencies or agents, though video is only publicly available for 4 of them. Videos of some of the other shootings remain under protective order because it's ongoing investigation. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security, which oversees federal immigration agents, said the use of force was justified in 13 cases and charged at least 6 people with assaulting a federal officer. Charges were dismissed in 3 of the cases. So they're shooting 50% on what they claim to be justified. Not to mention, this is January 9th, 2026. Feds pay $125,000 after Border Patrol agent pointed a gun at a Portland hotel worker. Federal government Friday agreed to pay $125,000. They don't pay. That's your money, by the way. You're paying for a ICE agent pointing a gun at a hotel worker. The federal government on Friday agreed to pay $125,000 after a judge found a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent liable for civil assault after pointing a gun at a hotel maintenance man who came to the agent's room to unclog a toilet. The final payout for the 2020 encounter, this was from 2020, came a day after the unrelated shooting in Southeast Portland involved 1 or more U.S. Customs, Border Patrol, or Border Protection's officers who wounded 2 people. In 2020, Agent Joshua Jones was part of the Phoenix-based Border Patrol Tactical Unit sent to Portland to guard the federal courthouse and other federal buildings during the downtown George Floyd situation. Jones was staying at a room at the Residence Inn by Marriott in northern Portland. He called down to the front desk to have a maintenance guy come up and fix his toilet. Christopher Frizen, a chief maintenance engineer at the hotel, arrived at Jones's room on July 27, 2020, knocked several times, calling out maintenance, gave his name, and waited holding a plunger. And then Jones opened the door. The agent opened the door with a sweatshirt with the hood over it and grabbed his gun and pointed it straight at the chest of the guy. Later, he admitted to the maintenance guy that he messed up. This goes along with a whole bunch of other videos that I've seen the past few months where ICE agents are drawing weapons on people and pointing them at them for just standing there on the sidewalk and whatnot. It's not like there's actual aggression happening. They're literally just standing there. And because the person's not moving off the sidewalk where they have a right to stand, ICE agents are pulling loaded weapons and pointing it at people. Adding on to this, the Trump administration jails migrant teens in facility known for child abuse. Pennsylvania recently revoked a license for the Secure Juvenile Detention Center where the administration sends some migrant children, even some with no pending criminal charges. I find it funny that it's called the Abraxas Academy. If you know Gnosticism, you know what the Abraxas is. Pretty fascinating. The Trump administration said it is focused on protecting unaccompanied migrant children and so on and so forth. But the problem is, we're not going to go over all this. The problem is the place that they're sending these migrant teenage boys is into a place that staff are sexually abusing children. State inspectors have documented at least 15 incidences since 2013 in which the said staff physically mistreated minors at the Morgantown facility, which hold principality juveniles facing or convicted of criminal offenses. And at least, by the way, these children that are being placed there, it's a contract where they don't even have criminal charges. They're just being held there. In at least 2 incidences, officials documented allegations of staff sexually harassing or sexually abusing young residents. The most recent reported abuse occurred in November. In a lawsuit filed in 2024, 6 former residents of the facility alleged that they were sexually abused by the staff between 2007 and 2016, accusing management of enabling a culture of abuse. That's just one. You know, this immigration thing is part of the network of trafficking. If you don't know, that's exactly how that works. On top of that, Trump calls for $1.5 trillion defense budget to build dream military. President Donald Trump called for the Pentagon's budget to be increased by more than 50% from the $901 billion approved by Congress for 2026 to $1.5 trillion in 2027, saying that the financial boost would allow the United States to build its dream military. If you think that that's all for outside domestic grounds, I got beachfront property to sell you in Montana. This is going to be used against us too. In January 7th, post in Truth Social, Trump said he will ask Congress to increase the Defense Department's budget next fiscal year and make the decision on a 2027 spending after long and difficult negotiations with senators, congressmen, secretaries, and other political representatives, especially in these very troubled and dangerous times. Our military budget for the year of 2027 should not be $1 trillion, but rather $1.5 trillion, Trump wrote. This will allow us to build the dream military that we have long been entitled to, and more importantly, that will keep us safe and secure regardless of foe. Then I talked about this on the Wretched Recap, in case you guys missed it. There's a letter that came out by the Postmaster General for the USPS. They took a 2020 letter that had to do with essential workers, and they resent it out this past week to the officers who are in their districts for their employees. And it basically talks about during large-scale emergencies, including epidemics, hurricanes, and civil unrest, states and localities may issue curfew orders or other directives restricting travel. Employees and contractors should carry the essential service letter with them as they perform duties for the postal service to travel to and from work. It is critical that all employees and contractors carry their postal ID badge with them at all times. If encountered or stopped by state or local enforcement officials enforcing travel restrictions, utilize the letter and the ID badge and so on and so forth. Is this a canary in the coal mine? The timing of this is pretty fascinating with the whole Minnesota situation happening. Something to keep in mind. If you want to know more about this, check out Friday's Wretched Recap. I go a little bit more in depth on it. And last but not least, I saved this for the end because I wanted to make sure that we're aware of this. U.S. General says he would execute order to attack Americans. A 4-star U.S. general has stated under oath that he would definitely execute an order to attack American citizens. General Gillot, a nominee to lead CENTCOM, made this chilling admission during a Senate Arms Force Committee hearing in response to a direct question from Senator Jack Reed. This exchange occurred following the White House memorandum on countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. So basically, this exchange occurred following a White House memorandum on the countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. What is that? NSPM 7. During a meeting where they're asking a 4-star general, would you fire upon U.S. American citizens? And it's centered around the NSPM 7 policy. He says yes. That document, NSPM 7, grants the federal government broad authority to disrupt entities it deems as a threat, whatever they deem is a threat in a domestic terrorist. Well, they just sent BORTAC, the anti-terrorism border patrol group in Minneapolis. Consequently, this testimony confirms that a high-ranking military officer would use force against a U.S. citizen without trial, provided he is deemed the order lawful. This is so anti-constitutional. Oh my gosh. A White House memorandum issued on September 25th, 2025, titled Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence, directs the National Joint Terrorism Task Force to create a comprehensive national strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt groups the government deems engaged in political violence. When asked directly if he would attack a designated domestic terrorist organization, which could be anybody they deem as anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-Christian, all those things, they could deem you as a terrorist. When asked directly if he would attack a designated domestic terrorist organization on U.S. soil, General Gillett confirmed his willingness to do so if he believed that the order was lawful. During the hearing, Senator Jack Reed asked if the president declared an organization a terrorist organization or a DTO, which is on a secret list, and you were ordered to attack them on U.S. soil, would you carry out the order? General Gillett responded, Senator Reed, as with any order I get, I would assess the order, consult the legal authorities to ensure that it was a lawful order. A lot of good that did with Venezuela, right? And if I had no concerns and I was confident in the lawful order, I would definitely execute that order. Thus, the general's response confirmed that a legal justification alone suffices for the U.S. military to conduct operations against American citizens within the United States. I mean, again, I made reference. I thought we were going to go a lot over on time. We're still over, but thank you guys for hanging with me and sticking for this long episode. I appreciate you. We're almost done. We're not going to do questions tonight. We just don't have time. So I apologize for that. But when I said earlier that sometimes that I just every once in a while, just to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the prophecy community and stuff like that, I go around and I check things out, skim through videos, read some comments and stuff like that, just to see what's going on. And the fact that 99%, and I'm going to say 99% because the 100% of the ones that I've seen are going along with it. But I know that there are some out there that aren't following along with this, and I'm good with that. They're in support of this. They support this. Pastors, prophecy teachers, they support this. Whether it's ignorance, whether it's an agenda, whether it's just being scared that if they actually did speak the truth, that they would lose their subscribers who have all been brainwashed to believe what they've been peddling for the past few years. They support this. They do. The Prophecy Mafia supports this. Everything that we went over. They support it. I just saw, I go and I look at, and it's sick. Honestly, it's sick because the pastors that claim that they view, human life as something special and God's creation and so on and so forth like that, the way that they speak about people doesn't tell me that. If I wasn't a Christian and I heard some of what pastors are saying and stuff like that, why would I go along with that? You claim that you treat all life as precious. That's what God says. That's what the Word of God says. But yet you speak the way that you do because you're following a political narrative. And a lot of them just don't care. They don't even want to actually get the information behind this stuff. They pick up the narratives and the national stories that go along with their beliefs so they can preach it. I just watched something on Sunday with Brandon Holthouse talking about Nick Surley, and it's clear that he either didn't do a lick of information because he had an agenda he had to push, or he did and he hid the truth. I don't know what it is. But it's sick because he's peddling that stuff every Sunday from his pulpit. And it's clear that he has an agenda and he's brainwashing his people. I just did a little click through of Brett Metter's prophecy update when he was talking about the Minnesota thing over there. And the one person, the lady who was shot, she's living a gay lifestyle, which we know is sin and not good, but he can't even refer to as a decent human being. He just kept calling her the lesbian. It's like, really? That's a human life, whether they're living in sin or not. And you're going to speak in a disrespectful way in that way? And he was going along with the narrative, how he was saying things. He clearly had an agenda with on that. But that's just two examples that I've seen. I watch all these guys with what they're doing, and they all have narrative. They don't care about the truth. They don't. They have a narrative that they're pushing. They are deceiving the churches. And I will say that. And I know for a fact that I have quite a few people that tune into my videos in order to find out what I'm talking about, and then they take that information back to their pastors and stuff like that. I know for a fact that that's what's going on. And so I'm just going to, for you who do that, who watch, that are watching this point, I'm telling you right now, clip this part of the video, because what I'm about to say, I want you, please hand deliver this video to whatever pastor you're taking it to. For all of the pastors who have been outspoken in pumping Trump and approving of what's been going on, the very same thing that if you actually do some research and give an ounce of care about the truth, you'll see what's actually going on. But you don't, because you want to support the narrative being pushed out there and to brainwash your watchers and stuff like that. For you pastors that have been praising and pumping what ICE has been doing in this country and praising what Trump has been doing with ICE, the moment that they turn around and start going to the doorstep of your church, to the doorstep of your family, to the doorstep of your friends, and to the doorstep of your own house to take you down for whatever it is that they may deem you being a terrorist for, you hold no right to complain, you hold no right to criticize, and you need to shut your mouth and listen to the orders that they have been given to you and accept your detainment exactly as you've told everybody else to do so far. Clip that and send that to your pastor. Because the moment that ICE gets turned around on you, you hold no right to go against it. You don't. Often I hear pastors talking about that story about first they came for so-and-so and nobody said anything. Then they came for so-and-so and nobody said anything. Then they came for me and there was nobody left. We're living that story right now. I hope you guys realize that. We are living that very same story. And the people that have been, the pastors that have been using that for sermons for decades can't even recognize it, or they do, and they're too scared to say anything because they have an agenda, a political agenda, Satan's religion that's more important than actually speaking the truth of what's going on. It's unfortunate. Especially when we live in a time where the Bible explicitly tells us this is the time of deception. Deception is not the easy thing over there that's got the bright neon lights saying, hey, check it out. I'm deceiving you. Ha 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 ha. That's not deception. Deception is the stuff that's going on in your own backyard under the guise of what you believe in, that slowly deteriorates, slowly crumbles the very foundational pieces of the things that you believe in a very subtle, over time way, so that eventually you support the very same thing that you've been outspoken against your entire life. That is deception, and that is what we are witnessing in the church right now. The very same thing that Christ Jesus has warned us to not fall for. Pastors often talk about how the church is falling apart, falling into apostasy, going the way of the world. But the problem is the very same pastors that talk about that when it comes to the leftist side of things, their own church is doing the exact same thing because they're silent on the right side of things. It's a narrow path that we walk. We don't put our foot on the left side. We don't put our foot on the right side. We walk the very narrow path. But the problem is churches have decided that they're going to walk on the left or the right of that path, not the narrow. My rant's over. I just figured after all the stuff that we went over today, I believe I had the right to say something at the end. But we always end with the best, the most important, the glorious thing of all, and that's the gospel of Jesus Christ. Where eventually, when this stuff starts to get so bad and the world starts to get molded into prophetic end times, the church won't be here for that. And as long as you have salvation in Jesus Christ, you won't have to worry about this. You won't. So if you don't have the Lord, His gospel is simple as ABC. A is you admit that you're a sinner. The act of repentance, the changing of mind, metanoia, turning from self to Christ. It's through repentance that allows us to have true belief in Jesus Christ, because how can we believe in Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior if we don't know why we need Him? And so it's through that repentance that allows true belief in Jesus Christ. We believe that Jesus Christ is the one and only begotten Son of God, that He came down 100% man, 100% God, the God-man, the one and only. And He lived the perfect, sinless life, the one and only to do so, which means He was the only one qualified to carry the sins of the world upon His shoulders. He carried my sin. It was my sin that weighed Him down, that placed Him on that cross. And it was my own hand that drove the nails into His hands and the nail into His feet. But He willingly took that so that I may live. He went to the cross and He was crucified and He died. But because there is power in the blood of Jesus Christ, the blood that covers me and my sin and washes me pure, He defeated death and rose again on the third day for all who believe in Him shall not perish but live forever in His presence and in His glory. The glory is His. He took it. He bled. Powerful blood that washes over us. Gave Himself willingly. And it was completed. Tetelestai, it is finished. So when we place our faith in Christ, we place our faith in Him, we place our faith in His life, we place our faith in His crucifixion, in His spilled blood, and His completed work upon the cross, where He defeated death and rose again. When we place our faith in Him, we place our faith in all of that. And C, as we call upon the Lord, when we receive salvation, we are indwelt with the Holy Spirit and we are given an incredible supernatural gift of prayer that allows us direct access to the throne room of God. And Scripture talks about never cease praying. Why is that? Because our Heavenly Father wants to hear from you. We say, Lord Jesus, thank you, Lord, for this time, for allowing us to get together and fellowship with each other. Hopefully we use this time to recharge, to fellowship together as the body of Christ, and to lift up your name, to hear the warning that's going on in these last days, and use that as encouragement and fire for our own walk and to share the gospel. God, we thank you for allowing us to see the things that we're seeing right now. We thank you for allowing us to see through part of the deception, so we're able to see some of the things that are going on that you want us to see. And God, we ask, Lord, please give us vision to be able to see through more deception, to see through the things that are happening, and to allow us to look past the haze and to just keep our eyes fixated on you, Lord. God, give us the strength to make it through each day. Times are getting hard, but we understand what you went through was much, much harder, and so we use that in order to move forward in your name. And give us the boldness to speak the truth, speak what many people don't want to hear, and to, above all, to speak the name of Jesus and your gospel. We say, Lord Jesus, please come soon, Maranatha. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, guys. Again, no questions tonight. We just don't have time. But thank you guys for joining me today. Usual spiel. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe. Get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can do me a solid and like, share, subscribe, certainly appreciate it. Hopefully we can get this out to as many people as we can. Use this as warning and share the gospel with them. So please like, share, subscribe. Also follow Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back. I've live streaming over on Rumble, so make sure you guys go ahead and follow over there. Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things here and there that I can't necessarily put in video format. So if you want to follow along on there, you can. If you don't want to, no worries. Just make sure you bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. It's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything that's happening. With Wretched Watchmen, you'll find the latest podcasts and live streams are there. The announcements are there. The free book to download, all that stuff. So make sure you guys go ahead and bookmark the website so you're always up to date on what's happening. And last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel, what I got going on, got donation links down below, CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. It runs solely off of your guys' generous donations. So if you guys would like to support this channel, what I got going on, I got those links below. Again, I hope you guys realize you are the ones that make all this work. You guys are the ones that make everything happen here. Your support and your encouragement and your prayers and your gifts and everything. It's just, again, thank you guys for allowing this to be what it is. Our own little small card table in the corner as we're just waiting for the Lord to come. So thank you guys for your support and your blessings. I appreciate you guys. I'm starting to lose my voice. This has been a long one. But yeah, so that's that. Tomorrow's Sunday, so make sure you guys get your wretched, heathenic, misfit booties to church tomorrow, whether online, in person, doesn't matter, as long as it's a Bible-believing, Christ-following church. Make sure you guys get there. And then Tuesday, the Lord does not come back. Same time, same place. I'll meet you guys right back here. Hopefully it won't be like tonight, but you never know. So, all right, guys, I'll see you then. Peace out. Maranatha.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.